Now that Mr. Newman's here, we can get started.
All right, thank you.
Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. I now call the scheduled meeting of the Brevard County Board of Adjustments to order. We do have a quorum, and we are prepared to move forward. I'm going to get a couple of quick announcements out of the way. Dr. Bass, sitting to the left of me, was recently moved from an alternate position to a primary position representing District 4. Mr. Dave Newman, who is the alternate for District 5, is sitting in place of Bill Hoffman, the vice chair, who is not available today. I also want to say on the record and let my fellow board members know that due to a significant increase in my personal workload, I sent a letter of resignation from the board to the commissioner's office recently. Although they accepted it, we engaged in further communications, and I'm going to stay on the board, but I'm going to step down from the chair, and I think that would alleviate the issue, and we'll see how it goes from there. But I think remaining on the board would be important. So I think we wait till next board meeting to elect the next chair, since we have two primaries that are not here today. With that, we can move forward. Would Mr. Bodie from the Planning and Development Office please describe the function and operation of the Board of Zoning Adjustment to our applicants and the audience?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body established by the Board of County Commissioners under Chapter 62, Article 2, Division 4 of the Brevard County Code. The Board of Adjustment is empowered to hear the requests for variances to the zoning regulation and the sign regulation in Chapter 62, Article 6, and Article 9. Pursuant to Florida Rules of Appellate Procedure, any person or persons jointly or severally aggrieved by any decision of the Board of Adjustment may, within 30 days after the date the order is signed, apply to a court of competent jurisdiction for appropriate relief. Mr. Chairman, you have 7 items on your agenda today.
Thank you, Mr. Bodie.
Mr. Chair, before we get started, I'd like to bring a matter to your attention. It's come to my attention that the courtesy notices that are our standard business practices were not sent out for this meeting. I do apologize for that oversight. And I want to stress that it's not required as far as our code. However, it is a standard business practice that's listed on our website that we send out courtesy notices. So it is your choice whether to move forward, and our county attorney is here to provide any legal advice for you. But I just wanted you to be aware that the courtesy notices were not sent out.
Thank you. Are there any additional letters in opposition or in favor of this request?
There's one item, and I believe it's item 6, G6, that has 2 letters in opposition.
All right. And in the package, we have several letters in favor. Can I just, by a show of hands, see who's here to speak on item 6, the O'Kane's application? There really isn't a need at this moment, no. I'm going to make a judgment call. I've been to the residence several times. This is another variance request that followed a next-door neighbor's variance request, which was approved not long ago. I'm very familiar with the prior variance request and the current variance request. I was at the property just the other day. We have several letters in favor, several letters in opposition. I think we're going to get a really good overall sampling of any argument for and against. So I would favor moving forward with it today and not tabling it, especially for the fact that I don't plan on being at the next meeting, and I feel as I have the most informed knowledge of this variance request. So we will move forward with that. Does that
Okay,
okay?
do we need to have a vote of the board, or is,
No, we've met all legal requirements, therefore we can move forward without any legal concerns. So it's at the pleasure of the board. You're aware of the courtesy notices, not required, just something that we do as our normal business practice.
Okay. Well, with everyone taking time off of their work and other personal matters and coming today, I think it'd be efficient and best suited to move forward with that application today. Thank you. Would Dr. Bass please explain to the applicants and the audience the statutory definition of a hardship?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. A variance may be granted when it is not been contrary to public interest and where owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter will result in unnecessary and undue hardship. The term undue hardship has a specific legal definition in this context and essentially means that without the requested variance, the applicant will have no reasonable use of the subject property under existing development regulations. Personal medical reasons shall not be considered as grounds for establishing undue hardship sufficient to qualify an applicant for a variance. Economic reasons may be considered only in the instances where the landowner cannot yield a reasonable use and/or reasonable return under the existing land development regulations. The applicant must answer a variance hardship worksheet with 6 questions. The Board of Adjustment will discuss these questions today with each applicant who has requested a variance.
Thank you, Dr. Bass. I will now address our board members, the applicants, and our audience regarding the board procedures for today's hearing. The Board of Zoning Adjustment is a quasi-judicial board with members appointed by the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners and will utilize Robert's Rules of Order to conduct its proceedings. The chair is asking all board members not to ask questions while the applicants are making their presentations. Once the applicants have completed their presentation, we will begin board questioning with the board member who represents the applicant's district. When concluded, questioning is open to the full board. The chair will recognize each board member in turn. Once all board members have completed their questioning, we will then open the floor to the audience who may be here to speak concerning the applicant's application. Anyone from the audience wishing to speak will be given the opportunity to address the board only once. At the conclusion of public comment, the applicant will be given additional time for rebuttal as well as time to present their final comments. Once completed, no further comment will be heard from the applicant or the public. The action then moves to the board for discussion and action. We will not use a timer for this meeting. Instead, we are asking each speaker to be concise in what they have to say. It is important that you stay on the subject and avoid information that is not relevant. All persons speaking must provide their name and address for the public record. Those wishing not to verbally state their address may ask the clerk at the podium for an address card. Please fill it out and return it to the clerk. Our next order of business is to approve the minutes of our previous meeting, and we actually have minutes for our January meeting and minutes for our February meeting to address and approve. Let's start with our January minutes. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll make the motion.
Motion to approve by Mr. Newman,
Second.
second by Ms. Mallard. We got a motion to approve and a second. All in favor to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. And now for the minutes of our February meeting, do we have a motion for those?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Newman, we need a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second by Dr. Bass. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those minutes are approved as well. Mr. Bodie, may we have the first applicant that is requesting a variance?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item G1 was re-advertised from the January 17, 2024 BOA meeting, and this item needed to be re-advertised due to an error in the legal description of the warranty deed. And this is application 23V00047, Christopher D. Strozier, request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, Section 62-1345A, to permit a variance of 10 feet from the required 75-foot minimum lot width in an RU-1-11 single-family residential zoning classification. And this is located at tax account number 2511433 in District 2.
Mr. Bodie, is this location in Mims? I believe the application arises in District 1.
Okay, this is the tax account number. It is 2104016, and it is located in District 1. That's a good catch, Kevin.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bodie.
There are a couple on here that the district is not correct. So when you come across them, for example, G4 says it's District 4, but it's actually in Merritt Island, and that's not D4.
I believe the section of Merritt Island below Pineda Causeway is District 4.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Will the applicant for item 1 please approach the podium?
How y'all doing?
Good afternoon. How are you?
Christopher Strozier, 2466 Kaiser Road, Mims, Florida.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give to this Board of Adjustment is the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You may speak clearly into the microphone and present your matter.
Yes, I had this property, and I think back in, Mr. Brody was telling me back in the 60s, it was zoned for a different zoning, and I was wanting to rezone it so I could put a residential house on there. I think we did the variance already, so we passed the variance, so I'm just wanting to know if we can do a rezoning to the status of what it need to be.
So we're here to hear your request for a variance
Yes, sir.
and to address that request and either approve or deny the variance. And then with that, you're wishing to have the property legitimized so you then can rezone it.
Yes, sir. That's what I want.
So, Mr. Chair, just so you understand, it was during the review of Mr. Strozier's rezoning application, there was found an error in the legal description for his warranty deed. Therefore, he needed to redo the variance request that he's here today for.
Was that legal description revised and updated?
Yes, it was.
All right, just bear with me.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Mallard, did you visit this location or take some time to review this? Okay.
Yes, I did, not recently, but maybe last month
Yes,
or a
ma'am.
month
It
ago,
was
2 months ago,
Yes, ma'am.
give or take. I visited the property out in Mims, I did.
Okay.
So
Why
that
don't you-
was a great catch, because I didn't even catch that. But
why don't-
yes,
Why don't you start with some questioning and
so I would just like to refresh ourselves.
Yes, ma'am.
I remember visiting your property out in Mims, and again, the way your land is situated, now, just refresh my memory,
Okay.
because the way your land was situated, it was on that street, it was like 2 houses to your right, and I think a tower on your left?
Yes,
Am
ma'am.
I correct?
It was a FPL tower behind the
FPL
property
tower,
where it was
okay,
another
so I want to
entrance
make
that
sure I
way.
have the right
Yes, ma'am,
property.
that's the right property.
Okay, and again, we just want to make sure that you were just building on this land a single-family home for your family,
Yes, ma'am.
and you needed to be rezoned to do so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that's what I remember from this, that's correct. I remember the block and I remember the property. So now we're back because it was the warranty deed that had to be reinstated, and we needed the legal description revised and updated, and that has been done, correct?
Yes, I corrected that.
Okay. So now we're back just to get a variance on your land so you could start building. You haven't started building now, is
No,
that
ma'am.
correct?
No, ma'am. Not
Okay.
without permission.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions. I remember exactly.
Any other board members have questions? All right, you may stand aside or have a seat real briefly. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on behalf or in opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, you may step back up to the podium. Were there any letters in opposition or in favor? Okay.
I don't see any.
Okay. All right, at this time, I didn't mean for you to step back at the board, at the podium. You can have a seat, I apologize. This time, we'll move the agenda item to the board for discussion and action. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I do make a motion, as previously stated, but I make a motion again now to approve the variance depicted according to the survey. However, because it's been updated, the warranty deed and the legal description revised, I make that motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Ms. Mallard. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Dr. Bass. Do you have any further comments about this? Open to discussion?
No, the only comment that we was concerned about before, but it wasn't really a concern, was exactly what he was gonna do with the land and what was gonna be on that land. And I was proud to see that he's building a single-family home for his family, and nothing else. And in that neighborhood, that's gonna increase the value of the neighborhood as well.
Any further discussion?
Just in general, it sounds like we pretty much went through the issue last time when it was in January. I was not presently here, but that being said, it was gone forward pretty positively, so I think it's all good to move forward with this.
Thank you. Dr. Bass?
Yes, I do recall the last conversations that we had about this. I was here, so I'm in agreement with the motion at this time.
All right. In order to authorize any variance, the Board of Adjustment, through a majority vote, must find all of the following factors to exist: that special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification; that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant; that granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification; that literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant; that the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure; and that the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such use variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. With that, I'll call the motion to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? With that, your variance passes with an anonymous vote of approval. Thank you. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant?
Yes, item number G2, variance application 24V00002, Steve Carey Barnes and Lisa Marie Barnes request variance to Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62-1345A to permit a variance of 2 feet from the required 7.5-foot side east setback for a primary structure in the RU-1 single-family residential zoning classification, and this is located at tax account number 2956450 in District 3.
Thank you. Will the applicant please step forward to the podium? Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Steve Barnes. I live at 310 Beverly Court, Melbourne Beach, and simply looking for a variance.
Okay. Mr. Barnes, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give to the Board of Adjustment is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may speak directly into the microphone.
We have tried on multiple times to figure out a great place to put a garage, specifically the west side, the south side, the north side, the east side. The only way we're going to be able to put one is to the east side, so that's the only opportunity we have. We have checked with the locals that's within 300 foot of our house, both opposing of the canal as well as our street. No one was opposing to that, and I think it's all listed there in my hardship variance and some additional information. So simply looking for basically 1.83 variance. We put 2 feet just to round it up.
Was that in feet?
Ma'am?
You said 1 point.
It's
Feet?
1.883 feet that we're looking for.
That was what I was looking for.
Yes.
The adjective.
And we put 2 feet just to round up.
Doctor, if you're going to speak, could you please turn on your microphone so that it could be recorded? Thank you.
It's on. Okay.
Do you have anything else to present?
Other than we've spoken with everyone and none of the neighbors, and we're trying to actually, I have used my neighbor's across the street garage. He has a very large garage with an RV in it. While they're gone, I've been using it for my vehicle, my truck, because it will not fit inside of our smaller garage. This is an older home built in like 61. So we're restricted to how much space we have to be able to put our gear in there to protect it, mostly from storms and also from, we've had occasional break-ins in the area, and that's what I'm trying to do is just protect my equipment.
Thank you. Your application arises out of District 3, and District 3 is not represented today. So we'll just randomly ask you questions. I'll start just to, I think I know what you're asking. I just want, make sure I have full clarity.
Yes, sir.
You're wanting to build a garage structure onto your house. Only place to build it is on the side yard, where once it's built, you encroach into the setback by less than 2 feet.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
So I'm taking a look at the aerial map here, just so you know what I'm looking at.
Yes, sir.
So it sounds like this is for equipment. You said this isn't a garage for a vehicle or anything of that nature? Because I see a garage, the reason I'm saying that, I see a garage here that was that converted into living space, or what's the situation there, if you don't mind me asking?
No, good question. The garage is a garage, truly. My vehicle will not fit in it, and that's specifically what I'm looking for is my truck.
Okay.
It's been exposed to the elements we've had. Obviously, we know we have storms there, and I've had repairs done to it. I'm just up to here with the storms.
Okay. And so you're, when you say the vehicle won't fit, it's too low, it's not wide enough, just out of curiosity, what's the situation there?
A little bit of height. This is a lowered garage. It's
Okay.
a very short garage because it's an older home.
Okay. All right, excellent. And then you don't have any plans to convert that garage into living space, or you're keeping that as a garage, the current one? Or do you plan on doing other things with that in relation to the variance?
The both existing garage and the new garage will be nothing but a garage, not living space.
Okay. Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up question. The neighbor directly next to you who'd be most affected by that garage, have you spoken to them?
I have
What's their position?
0 problems.
Any other board member?
Yes. I was looking at the same house that our chairman was looking at. And I noticed in the picture that on the opposite side, it looks like those people have moved a little bit over into your neighbor's property. And then you are now going to go 2 feet in, further in, on his other side. Is there, between you and your neighbor, Is there enough room there for fire department and emergency equipment to get through? Were there to be a fire in the back of someone's home there?
Very much so. If you're looking at the neighbor to the east of us, I assume
I
that's...
think, well, according to this, it's to the west.
Okay, to the west, there's no encroachment from them or from ourselves. You can clearly get through if it's to the west.
And is that the person that said it's all right, that you say is in agreement? The person to the west?
Actually, I have a list of all the neighbors within 300 foot. They have signed off, no issues. But I also understand the concern from being able to get a fire department through that. There will be zero problems getting through. They still have clearance both on my easterly side, which that's where we're wanting to build,
Okay,
or the westerly side.
okay, okay. I was looking at this particular picture, and I was looking at the directions down at the bottom, and it looks like they're not quite the same as what they should be. So, all right, my confusion.
That's okay, Ms. Bass. I will tell you also, we've gone to Google Earth and looked our property up, as well as Mr. Bodie looked it up, and it took us to the wrong house. I don't know why. The legal description is correct inside the warranty deed, but Google Earth took us to the wrong house. So just want to let you know.
Yes, thank you. That was
Okay.
why I was talking what appeared to be out of turn.
Yep, that's okay.
Oh, it wasn't that.
Okay. That was my question. I was concerned about the safety of the houses near you.
Understand clearly. And if you look, I don't know if it shows it there, but directly to the east of us, there's an extremely large oak tree that resides on my neighbor's yard. It is just constantly dousing our house, along with, luckily I got a metal roof, but also our vehicles, and that's what I'm trying to do.
I'm very familiar with that issue.
Yep.
Yes.
No question. My question's been answered.
Okay. You
Thank
may stand aside for a quick sec.
Thanks, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance? Seeing none, you can return to the podium. Or did I do this again? What's that? Yeah. Yeah, do you have any final comments?
No, sir.
Okay. You may be seated.
Thanks, sir.
Board members, what is your pleasure?
Well, it sounds like it's pretty straightforward. I guess I would make a motion to approve the variance.
We have a motion to approve the variance
I'll second that.
with a second. Any discussion?
No discussion.
No discussion. With that, in order to authorize any variance, the Board of Adjustment, through a majority vote, must find all of the following factors to exist: that special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification; that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant; that granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, buildings, and structures in the identical zoning classification; that literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the application; that the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure; that the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such use variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. With that, let's take a vote on the motion. We have a motion to approve the variance with a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Your variance has passed unanimously. You're welcome. Mr. Bodie, may we please have the next applicant?
Yes, item G3, variance application 24V 00003, James Rowan and SaraJane Sengel, request variance to Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62-13725C, 2, to permit a variance of 17.36 feet from the required 20-foot rear setback for a primary structure. Variance number 2, Section 62-13725C1, 6.24 feet from the required 25-foot front setback for a primary structure in an RU-2 15 medium-density multifamily residential zoning classification, and this is located at tax account number 2435723 in District 2.
Thank you. Will the applicant please step forward to the podium? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name and address for the record.
James Rowan, 5542 Jamaica Road.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you are about to give this Board of Adjustment is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please speak directly into the microphone.
The application for the variance is that when we bought the property, we did not know the distance. It was supposed to be the two houses were built in 1957, I think, and we are trying to build an addition at the back with a more functional kitchen and laundry room on the house to the rear, because we're moving into that one.
Is that all you have for now?
I
We'll
don't-
ask you questions.
I don't know what else to say. I've never done this
I did say
before.
be concise. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Your application arises out of District 2, which I represent, so I did visit the property, and I did get a look at what you are planning to do. But just for clarification, you want to build a addition on the rear house. There's two houses
Yeah, the
on that
rear house.
property. So the rear house is where you want to build
Yeah.
your addition. By doing that, you need to get a permit.
Yeah.
And in the permit process, it was discovered that this house was built too close to the property line.
That's correct, yeah.
So we want to legitimize the distance.
where the house is, I think, yeah.
The encroachment into the setback.
Yeah.
And that would be variance number 1, which would normally require a 20-foot rear setback, and you want a variance of 17.36 feet into that setback.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Which would leave just under 3 feet clearance between the house and the property line.
3 feet. The existing house.
Should we approve this variance request, that would leave a distance between the dwelling, the structure, and the property line of under 3 feet.
That's correct, yes.
But it's been like that since 1957.
Since 1957, yeah.
Okay, thank you. The second variance request is also to legitimize what's currently there, and that's the front structure being
That's correct, from
Built
from the road, Arthur Avenue.
a little close to the road.
Yeah,
So you want a 6.24 variance of the required 25-foot setback.
that's correct.
Between the property line and the road, is there additional county space, easement space?
Between where now?
Between the actual front property line and the road itself, is there additional space in addition to that 25-foot setback? Your property line is not right at the road, is that correct?
No, it's not. It sits back from
It
it.
sets back
Yeah.
additional space.
Yeah.
Would you say it sets back at least that 6-foot space you're asking for, or more?
It would, yeah.
And
Maybe
then-
6, 8 foot or something.
And then the addition you're planning on building, you don't need a variance for that.
I think they may have said, if you look at, say, the back where the new addition is proposed.
Right.
I think that it says 18.8. Is that 0.8? Do I need a variance for that corner?
No, let me rephrase the question. I'm sorry. It was probably confusing. You don't need a variance for the addition, is that right?
The addition doesn't meet the 20-foot rear setback.
It doesn't.
But it was included with the variance that's requested for the rear setback to the
Okay.
addition.
So to approve the variance request for the structure itself would encompass the addition as well.
It includes what is on the proposal for the survey
right,
for
thank
the
you.
addition.
I think the variance is 1.2 foot.
Okay.
I'd be looking for.
Okay, I
think.
understand. All right, thank you. I understand. Are there any other board members that have questions?
Mr. Chair, if I just wanted to let you guys know, based on the survey that was provided, there is a 10-foot right-of-way between the back of the curb to the property line. So the survey shows it's 24 feet from the center line of Arthur Avenue, which includes 10 foot of right-of-way.
Okay. Thank you. Does any other board members have any questions?
Sir?
Mr. Newman?
So I'm going to ask some like general questions because I'm trying to wrap my head around what's going on here. So when did you buy this property? Was it a long time ago?
No, well, 2017, I think.
Okay, so this survey is from when you bought the property? Because
No,
this is a 2017 survey.
The planning commission asked me to get a new one.
Oh,
The
this is
planning
in-
department, this is all new.
Okay.
And
And I could be reading, oh, I see. It
I-
was recertified in 2023, but the original date of it was 10/17/2017. Got it.
Yeah, and they asked me,
Perfect.
yeah, they asked me to get a new survey and put the new addition on the back to
Got
lay
it.
it out.
Okay, awesome. And then, so clearly from that survey, you bought the house, like when you bought this property, you were unaware that, you know, there was this setback issue or things of that nature. This is only arising because you're trying to adjust the
Exactly,
property.
exactly, yeah, correct.
Okay, got it. Have you currently built anything since you've purchased it, you know, onto it? So this would be, you're going through the process, haven't built anything yet?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so,
I had to take down a shed that they asked for. There was
Oh,
at
okay.
the back fence, which I think you should have pictures. The lady, Trina Gillum, I emailed her pictures of a shed that was close to
Okay.
the, I don't know if you can see it there on the,
oh, no, that's fine. That helps answer my question. I appreciate that.
yeah, so
So you took down the shed?
I took down the shed. She
And,
said-
right, to maintain compliance with this?
exact.
Perfect. And then, so now, is the addition that you're building, is that where the shed was prior? Or is this in a different part of the property?
No, different
Okay.
part of the property. It's at the back of the second house, the house on the south.
Mm-hmm.
You can see where it's written proposed new one-story
Perfect.
structure.
Yep. Just want to be sure because I didn't
Yeah.
have that shed, and I appreciate that. Okay. Just want to make sure I have the whole picture here. All right, fantastic. That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You may stand aside or sit down real briefly. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in favor or in opposition to this variance request? You certainly are.
Hi.
Hi, can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, SaraJane Sengel, 5542 Jamaica Road.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give to this Board of Adjustment is the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
I just wanted to say the addition that we're building is a kitchen and a laundry room. When we bought this house, you can't even put two people in the kitchen. It's an old galley type style kitchen. So I just want to let you know that's just something functional that we would like to have to use.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else in the audience that want to speak in favor or in opposition? With that, you may return back to the podium. Do you have any final comments?
Yeah, no, I think happy enough.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you could take, you could take a seat. Yeah, you're good.
All right, no, let's open up the discussion. Is there a motion that anyone could make?
For the purposes of discussion, I'll make a motion to approve, and then we could decide from there.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second, Ms. Mallard. We have a motion to approve by Mr. Newman and a second by Ms. Mallard. With that, I'd like to open this variance request for board discussion.
I would, since there's going to be some additional building or new adjustments of the building that already exists, what I would suggest is that if the board approves this variance, that we may want to limit its approval to that as depicted in the survey by the applicant dated 12/23, just so that we don't
I agree with that statement.
move outside what we're approving.
With that, I appreciate you saying that. With that, we should be making these motions as depicted in the surveys. So, would you like to amend the motion?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I would be interested in amending my motion to approve it as depicted in the survey.
Thank you.
I second that.
Thank you.
Oh, and
Great
we have a
catch, Doctor.
second. Thank you.
Great. Do you have anything more, Doctor?
No.
Yeah, because for my portion, because I really wanted to, and again, I wanted to make sure I emphasize that for the purposes of discussion, because if you guys see something, definitely let me know, because it sounds like this was they just weren't given all of the information when they bought the property, and that's no harm, no foul there. I just don't want to, it's pretty, like, just looking at this aerial view of it, like, it's very tightly put into that side. They have all this land on the other portion, so I'm not quite sure what the story is there. But I presume if we don't allow for this, I guess this is a question for staff, they would have to remove the whole property that is there as it currently is built. Is that correct?
The property was developed in 1957. Zoning didn't start until 58, so they were built before the zoning codes. So they're non-conforming to the setbacks. You can't expand on a non-conforming structure, so that's the reason they're here, to get the variances so they can get their addition.
Right. I don't know, but I guess my question is the negative impact, if it were to happen to be a no on this, what would happen to them? That's what I'm
They
trying.
wouldn't be able to get their addition.
Oh, just
put
the
on.
addition, they wouldn't have to change their existing structure. Because currently, even though we're basically bringing it up to current code because
They
of
could
that.
try to do that if they would like to, if y'all deny it.
Okay, got
They
it.
would have to.
That's why I want to make sure that I'm not,
It's a separate process to
Yeah.
do a non-conforming use.
okay,
Where they would have to show that when that building was produced or built, and that it's remained in that current configuration.
okay.
It's much easier to get a variance than to go through that process.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I just want to make sure that I mean, for my purposes and everybody, go through the whole, what are the consequences if this were not to pass?
Sure.
What would be the hardship on them for that? So, but otherwise, I mean, doesn't sound like that they were, they're just kind of working with what they got. They're trying to update and improve the home. Actually, I think the one thing that, I mean, I didn't ask, I may have missed it. Did we ask them if they talked to their neighbor that would be going on? I did not either. Mr. Chair, is it okay if we bring them up to ask that question?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Can you come back up for a second, please, sir? Have you talked to your neighbor that would be closest to this new addition?
I have, yeah. His
Okay,
name
are-
is Larry. I don't know his second name. He moved here from California.
Okay.
He moved. His wife was originally from here, and that was her mother's house. And he talks to me every day. He's seen what I was doing, and
Okay, and that's what I just want to make sure. They're obviously not here today, whether
Yeah,
it's by
yeah.
work or whatever particular reasons, or they're just
no,
not
I think
opposed
he's
to
retired.
it.
He's retired.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
yeah.
And so I just want to make sure that you talk to them. They're okay with this if you were to get approved and build
Yeah.
this addition on. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm generally, given the circumstances, again, it seems like he's trying to do everything right here. I'd hate to, make them have to limit what they can do with their property, all because they bought an older home.
So I did get a chance to visit the property and observe the two structures that were built in 1958. The front structure was built according to current code, a little too close to the road, and the back structure, according to current code, was built a little too far or close to the rear property line. It's been like that for, I can't even do the math, 60-something years. And it didn't seem to be a problem then, and I'm certainly not going to have a problem legitimizing those two structures. As far as the addition, I did see the outline of where the addition is going to be constructed. It's much more limited and compacted in than the structure itself. There's a large side yard just to the east of the house where the kitchen addition is going to be built. There's plenty of space in that side yard and plenty of space between that new structure and the side property line. And then that structure and the distance between that structure and the rear property line is going to be over 19 feet, which is, or around 19 feet, which is probably 15 feet plus more than the distance between the structure and the property line now. So I'm looking at the addition as no intrusion to either property line, at least no more than what's already there, and much less in actuality. So I have no problem personally with your variance request. Any more discussion?
No discussion.
Just my first comment about following what we're approving here, because as we continue to build, or the kitchen is continued to build, it might get bigger. So I just want to make sure that we're not further encroaching beyond this area.
Yeah, and I think that's the importance of putting in our motions that it should be as depicted in the survey.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In order to authorize any variance, the Board of Adjustment, through majority vote, must find all the factors to exist. That special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. That the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. That granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification. That literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. That the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such use variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. With that, we have a motion to approve the variance as depicted in the survey, and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Your variance passes unanimously. Thank you. You're welcome. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant?
Yes, item G4, variance 24V00004. Gary Lee Collar and Susan Collar request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62-2118D3 to permit a variance of 6.2 feet over the 10.4-foot maximum projection permitted for a boat dock and a watercraft moored at the dock in an EU estate use zoning classification, and this is located at tax account number 2609578 in District 4.
Thank you. Will the applicant please step forward to the podium? Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Kelly Hyvonen, Land Development Strategies, 355 Spoonbill Lane, Melbourne Beach.
Thank you. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give to the Board of Adjustment is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. You may speak directly into the microphone, please.
Sure. So again, my name is Kelly Hyvonen. I am here on behalf of Gary Collar, who is the property owner of this property. He did.
I'm sorry. Other side. Do we have authorization for her to speak on behalf of the property owners?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Signed and sealed in blood. I saw it myself. So the property owner purchased this property mid-2022 with permits in place for the construction of a single-family home, customary accessory structures, such as the boat dock and the lift, and the decking. That's all there. So a boat dock and lift were installed according to the drawings furnished by the previous property owner. But after the dock and lift were installed, it came to the attention of the builder and the property owner that the boat lift piling, which I'm going to zoom in here to show you
Yes.
what's going on.
It was hard to see, yes.
Yes, so the boat lift piling, which, okay, here's the pretty picture, but maybe this is even more helpful. Okay. So you can see where the boat lift is, and there's pilings that project out into that waterway. So after they were installed, it came to the attention of the builder and the property owner that the piers, those pilings for the boat lift specifically, were too far into this man-made waterway. There is a question, is it a canal? Is it an easement? Is it a right-of-way? All we can tell is it's a man-made waterway. So it projects further than code allows by 6.2 feet. What's unique about this, so code allows those pilings to project 20% into a canal or drainage easement or right-of-way. And in this case, this is all private property, which is unique, and he's only building it on one side. So if he were to also build on the other side, someone else could come out 20%. So he's not exceeding a 20% plus a 20%. So it's a minimum request for him to be able to keep that boat lift there. If I go back right here, this kind of explains the unique circumstances for this property. So anyone else along Tropical Trail, they can put, their boat lift out of the east side or the west side, Banana River, Indian River. But in this case, they have this added benefit of this tucked away, private, man-made waterway. So he could just go stick it out even further into the Banana River, up to 20% into that. But this is just a secluded area. It's at a dead end, and this request will not impact any of his neighbors or anyone else. No one has any reason to come back into that dead end of the canal. And I won't bore you by going through my entire variance hardship worksheet, but we do believe that there are special conditions on this unique property in that it has this unique man-made waterway. The property owner did not knowingly cause the piers to be installed in violation of code. The man-made waterway is also put in place way prior to all of this happening. You can't do this kind of stuff anymore. Approval of the variance does not constitute any special privilege to what other EU zone properties are allowed. And literal enforcement of the code would constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship on the property owner. This is the minimum variance that would allow for the existing dock and boat lift to remain. We are fine with this being conditioned upon the survey that was included. He has no additional desire to put something on the other side of the canal or make it larger. So this is reasonable that a property with frontage on the Banana River be allowed to have a dock and boat lift that does not interfere with any other property owners. We believe this request is consistent with an allowance to have a 20% projection, since it's only on one side and he's not having any projections out of the other side, and no impacts to the neighbor. So if approved, there's just a couple things left. The house is under construction now. He'll be able to get the final irrigation and plants put in and then see all the properties so he can move here. So he's very excited to move to this area. I'm happy to take any questions.
This application arises out of District 4. Dr. Bass?
Yes. I've lived here for a very long time, and I'm very familiar with South Tropical Trail. And the purpose of buying property that far south is to have dual river access. That's the idea. And when I saw this picture, I was very surprised to see. is this land in the Banana River, was this man-made or?
Yes, it was a
Yeah.
man-made
Okay.
something that, it's kind of like its own little bay, protected from the elements of the river.
Oh,
And
yes,
as you
I-
know, if you put a boat dock into the Banana River, it could be 200 feet long.
That's right, that's
So-
right. Okay, I assumed that was what had happened, and I can appreciate the purpose of buying the property. Someone like this, because of the two-river access, is fabulous. It's a wonderful place to live. And I was just very surprised to see this enclosure. But when I looked at the property, when I went by, and I have been by there, as you said, it's not infringing on access by the neighbor to the Banana River, the neighbor to the south.
Correct.
So, and obviously the neighbors to the north have been living there with this island out there already. So, I really don't have any further questions. That was just primarily curious about how that land got in there.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
The man-made waterway, is that deep water?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. It's probably filled in over time, but I know that the boat he's planning on putting in there, it doesn't have a huge draft. It's not a sailboat. I don't want to guess and be incorrect.
Do you know if they would be planning on dredging?
No, there's no plans to dredge at this point.
Okay. And on that man-made waterway, are there any other docks?
There is a small, if I move away from this, it moves with me. You can see that there's a small dock
Further
a couple
north.
houses down. There's larger facilities even further north. The property owner next door actually doesn't have a dock at all. But as you see, those mangroves are growing over into it, so the canal is actually a lot wider than it looks like in this aerial.
Right.
So if you look at the survey, you can see how wide it is. It just looks like it's not that wide with all of the mangroves, so.
So it appears that, and I think you provided in your testimony, that the property in question is at the very end of that man-made waterway, and there would be no other access to other properties past his.
Correct. The edge of that waterway stops on his property and doesn't extend or give access to the property to the south.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
As something that we like to ask, I know this doesn't directly impact that neighbor, but do you know if the property owner or somebody representing them has reached out to any of the neighbors and asking about, are they okay with this happening and this permit being done and all of that?
I'm not aware of any objections from the neighbors for this variance for the pilings.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Mallard?
No questions.
All right, if you don't mind stepping aside or taking a seat, we'll just ask if there's any other audience members that want to speak in favor or in opposition to this variance request. Seeing none, you can return to the podium. Do you have any final comments?
Nope.
Okay. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Dr. Bass, this arises in your district. Do you have a preference?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve this variance
As depicted in the
survey.
Thank you. We have a
Yes.
motion to approve the variance as depicted in the survey by Dr. Bass. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Mallard. With that, Dr. Bass, would you like to start some discussions?
Yes, I would. And as a new Floridian, I believe that's coming into our state, it would be nice to, if that person were informed that as mangroves continue to grow, and it looks like they're growing to the west and not the east, that is a preserved Florida natural shrub, plant, tree, and as was asked earlier, redredging this by anyone would probably not be a good idea, just in comment, and especially the mangroves, they grow very fast and they spread, so he may end up going out to the river eventually anyway, just as a comment.
Just a couple quick comments. This waterway, it's the very end of the waterway at the subject property. I don't see any other boats that would need to navigate through there. It's almost, that end is almost an exclusive use for that property. Obviously, there's been boats there before. Applicant doesn't plan on dredging, and I really see no problem with having this variance approved.
Oh, no, I'm generally in alignment with what you guys are saying. I don't think that there's any harm or foul in approving this.
And I agree.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, I will now read the 6 undue hardship worksheet questions. In order to authorize any variance, the Board of Adjustment through majority vote must find all the following factors to exist: that special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other land structures or buildings in the applicable zoning classification, that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant, that granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification, that literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant, that the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure, that the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such use variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. With that, board members, we have a motion to approve as depicted on the survey with a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That your application and your variance passes unanimously. You're welcome. Mr. Bodie, may we please have the next applicant?
Yes, item G5, variance application 24V00006. Ronald Robin requests variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, Section 62-1446, D7, to permit a variance of 5.2 feet from the 10-foot side north setback required for an accessory structure in a PUD, Plan Unit Development Zoning Classification, and this is located at tax account number 2614560 in District 4.
Thank you. Will the applicant please approach the podium?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Aldreche. I'm counsel for Mr. Robin.
Okay. Thank you. You may speak clearly into the microphone, please.
Yes, my address for the record is 508 North Harbor City Boulevard, Melbourne, Florida, 32935.
Thank you.
And for the record, on file, we have unfiled authorization.
I believe counsel, if it's attorney authorization, isn't required.
The question was, is there authorization for this
Oh,
attorney
yes,
to
there
speak
is.
on behalf of the
Thank you.
applicant?
Yeah.
For the record.
For the record.
Thank you.
And I've learned recently that I do not have to swear the attorneys in unless they're, a fact and only witness. So,
Yes.
I'm not swearing you in.
Okay. All right, so we're here to get a variance for what's presently on the property. On the far end, it's a shed. It was placed on what was already existing asphalt concrete area, pre-existing. Just to give you a little bit of history on the property, Mr. Robin obtained the property in 2023 from company New Age Telecom LLC. Just to be clear, this was his company. The company purchased the property in 2021. In 2022, he hired a contractor to install the existing shed. He hired the contractor. He spent thousands and thousands of dollars. They were required to get permits, get approval from the county, and install the shed and do other work on the property. Later on through the year is when he realized, when he got noticed, that the shed was encroaching on a setback. Currently, Mr. Robin is working with, I believe, Public Works and Environmental to vacate some easements on the property, and they have said that once he gets this approval for the variance on the setbacks for the shed, they'll vacate those easements. So right now, the shed is encroaching, I believe, about 5.2 feet, as stated earlier. I believe there still be a clearance at least 4.8 feet for anyone to, be able to travel back and forth. The shed does go across about 32 feet, I believe, based on the survey that we provided. So right now, the minimum amount that's what's required in order for us to get that variance into the easement. That is the minimum required. Mr. Robin has reached out to his neighbors, specifically the neighbor that is to the left side of his property. They have no objections. He went on and further and asked his other neighbors, the front neighbors, the neighbors to the right, to see if there was any objections. None of his neighbors are objecting, have no issues with the current shed. There is no plans for the shed to be extended. It's solely for storage use. There's nothing else that he's going to be extending on the shed. There are other properties surrounded in the neighborhood that have similar sheds that are also within the setbacks. So that shouldn't be an issue from any other neighbors surrounded in the area. And let me see. If Mr. Robin is required to remove the shed, it would cause an undue hardship. Again, the shed has been there for at least 3 years, you would say. Let me see. I'm sorry, no, almost 2 years. I apologize. And again, I don't believe granting this variance would hurt the community or anything like that. It's been there for quite a while, and we haven't had any issues or complaints since then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before we go on, I just want to clarify, the drainage easement was already vacated by the county for the portion that was where the shed was encroaching.
Okay. Thank you. This application arises out of District 4. Dr. Bass?
It looks quite straightforward at this particular time. When I first looked at the colored photo, I thought perhaps it was backing up to the Banana River, but it's not. And I was thinking, if somebody wanted to build a dock or something out, but that's not going to happen with this configuration, I would not think. So it doesn't look like, from the picture, it is encroaching on any usable or severely impairs the neighbors to the north property. It's out there kind of standing by itself in this small wedge. So I really don't have any I don't have any questions. It looks like it's fairly straightforward to me.
Any other board members have questions? I do not either. You may stand aside for just a quick sec. Are there any audience members who would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, you may reapproach the podium. Do you have any final questions or comments?
No, not this time. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll open up for a vote for discussion.
I will make a motion.
A motion, not a
Yes.
vote. Let's make a motion first.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
I will make a motion to approve the variance as depicted by the survey.
We have a motion to approve the variance as depicted by the survey by Dr. Bass. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Mallard. With that, do we have any additional discussion?
I don't. There's no trees or environment that is going to be disturbed in any way that I can see. So it's quite straightforward. The building has been there. Doesn't seem to be impinging on anybody else's property or on Florida itself.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I will go to the 6 hardship requirements. In order to authorize any variance, the Board of Adjustment, through a majority vote, must find all of the following factors to exist: that special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification; that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant; that granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification; that literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant; that the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure; and that granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the chapter, and that such use variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. With that, now I'll take a vote. All in favor for approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, your variance request passes unanimously. Thank you. For the next 2 variance requests, I'm going to suggest that we switch the order and hear variance request number 7 before 6, because I have a feeling 6 will be very lengthy and number 7 won't be. So if the board members are in agreement with that, it'll probably require a motion.
We can do that, Mr. Chair.
We can do that without a motion?
I make the motion.
I meant, we could do that without a motion, or we need a motion?
It's at the pleasure of the board. You don't need a motion to change the order.
Okay, go ahead.
It's the board's pleasure to change the order of 6 and 7. So the applicant for, Mr. Bodie, can you present us with the applicant of
Yes.
variance request 7?
Yes. Item G7, variance application 23V00033, Kevin and Torri Downs, request variance, Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62-1339-5B, to permit a variance to allow an accessory structure to be located forward of the front building line of the principal structure. Variance number 2, Section 62-1339-5B, to permit a variance to allow an accessory structure to be, a second accessory structure to be located forward of the front building line of the principal structure. And variance number 3, Section 62-1339-5B, to permit a variance of 5.2 feet from the required 10-foot side south setback for an accessory structure, a tennis court, and an EU state use zoning classification. And this is located at tax account number 2606220 in District 4.
Will the applicant please step forward to the podium? Good afternoon. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Kevin Downs. Our address is 8505 South Tropical Trail.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give to the Board of Adjustment is the truth?
Yes.
How may we help you?
So I was told when we went to get, we've lived in the home now for about 7 years, and I was told when we went to apply for a building permit that we needed to go through this process to legitimize the property. So we've got an in-law home that's at the front of the property. We've got a tennis court kind of in the middle, and then an existing home which we bought. All of these things were there when we bought the property 7 years ago. And so I believe I'm just here more as a formality, is my understanding.
Your application arises out of District 4, Dr. Bass?
And that formality is to approve everything the way it stands? Is that?
That's my understanding, yes, ma'am.
That is what this request is for?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
Okay.
You're trying to, and just for clarification, I know you said it, and Dr. Bass said it too, but I'm slow. You have three structures currently on the property that are out of code, and you're just trying to legitimize what's already there that was there before you even purchased the property.
So before we purchased the property, the in-law house existed, the tennis court existed, the primary home existed, and then we put in 2 sheds, and I believe one of the sheds is encroaching on the south easement. I think I heard that when you guys were reading. So I believe maybe that would be a small portion of it. But yes, sir, the goal is to just legitimize what's already there, what's existing, in order for us to be able to then go to the building department to get a building permit.
The 2 sheds that are in front of the front building line, he has a double frontage parcel. He has the river as his front, and then he has
Correct.
the remainder of South Tropical Trail. So he has
Yes.
the frontage of his property, because the existing guest house was there whenever the house was built back in early 2000s.
Which is on the South Tropical Trail Road.
Right.
Okay.
So he's trying to legitimize the 2 existing sheds that are in front of the house but toward the river, and then the tennis court setback.
Okay.
And those would be variance 1 and 2?
Yes, variance 1 and 2 are the sheds, and then variance number 3 is for the tennis court setback.
When you purchased the property, only one of those 2 sheds were there?
No, sir, we put both in.
You put both in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you get a permit for them?
No, sir. There's no utilities. They're freestanding, essentially floating structures. They're just strapped down. You could technically pick them up and move them if you had to.
Any other board members have questions?
Sir?
Mr. Newman?
So at what point did you guys come forward yourselves, or did you get approached by the county about this, just so we can make sure that everything's clear here? Because that's what I'm trying to, we almost have all the pieces together, what's going on. That's probably the last one for me is, how did you come to need to do this? How did this, did you come to see us, I guess?
A long time ago, we went to get a permit,
Yeah.
and then they said, oh, wait a minute, no, you got to go through this process. And,
Got it.
And then I started scratching my head because the in-law house has been there since, I believe, like the 40s or 50s. The tennis court's been there for probably a couple of decades. So, but apparently it must have been the sheds that we dropped in.
Was that the permit that you're talking about, was it a permit for one of those sheds?
No, we're trying to pull a permit to actually build a pole barn, basically, a pole barn style that will match the Key West house.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and when we went to pull that permit, that's when they said, wait a minute, you've got to
Got all these things going on here, and
legitimize the property, and that's when they started talking about the tennis courts and the in-law house. I said, wait a minute, all this stuff has been here.
Yeah.
So, but as we walk through this, I'm getting enlightened, getting a much better understanding.
and thank you for that. That helps a little bit. Now, my question for staff is, are we going to have to deal with the pole barn down the road, or like?
No,
Okay.
I think it's an RV garage or carport is what it is, was
Yes, sir.
proposed. And he will just have to get that permitted. It appeared to meet the 10-foot setbacks. It's behind the front building line. There wasn't a problem with that.
Okay.
It was legitimizing everything else on the property that doesn't meet the zoning codes.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Ms. Mallard?
Clear.
All right, you may stand aside for a quick sec. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on behalf or in opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, you may reapproach the podium. Do you have any further questions or comments?
No, sir.
All right, you may be seated. Board members, what is your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance as depicted by the survey.
We have a motion to approve by Dr. Bass. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Mallard. And anyone have any discussion points?
Just in general, I mean, this reminds me a little bit of one of them that we had done prior. It seems like he's trying to do the right thing. Like, I'm glad that he came for a permit for the pole barn RV piece. So if that's what was going on, I could understand why the sheds may have been an oversight. Most people don't think about that, but in general, I can see where he's coming from, and I think this is something that we can move forward on.
Yes, I'm very familiar with the South Tropical Trail, in particular south of the Pineda Causeway, and it was just basically farmland, well, orange groves, for a long time. So as the property got divided up and people started building, there were just things that were missed. So, or perhaps things that were added that weren't an issue at that time. So I have no issue with this. It's pretty much typical of South Tropical Trail. These types of things are happening.
All right, with that, in order to authorize any variance, the Board of Adjustment, through majority vote, must find all the following factors to exist: that special circumstances and conditions exist that are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification; that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant; that granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification; that literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant; that the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure; that the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the chapter, and that such use variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. With that, I'll now call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And with that, your variance application passes unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Bodie, can we adjourn the meeting? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
It's up to y'all.
Would you please call the next applicant?
Yes. Item G6, variance application 24V00005, O'Kane Family Trust, request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62-2118D2 to permit a variance of 7.5 feet from the required 7.5-foot side north setback for a boat dock and watercraft. Variance number 2, Section 62-2118D2 to permit a variance of 7.5 feet from the required 7.5-foot side south setback for a boat dock and watercraft. And variance number 3, Section 62-2118D3 to permit a variance of 8 feet over the 16-foot maximum projection required for a boat dock and a watercraft in a RU-1-13 single-family residential zoning classification, and this is located at tax account number 2519529 in District 2.
Thank you. Will you both state your name and address for the record?
Annie O'Kane, 1732 Bayshore Drive, Cocoa Beach.
Thank you.
And Gwyn O'Kane, 1732 Bayshore Drive, Cocoa Beach.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give to this Board of Adjustment is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. How can we help you?
Well, first of all, thank you for taking the time to meet with us, and we apologize if this is going to be a challenging one.
All right, well, please speak
oh,
directly in the
sorry, yes.
microphone, and what are we being handed?
So this is
We're
some
going to need a copy of that too, please.
This is some supporting material. I didn't want to go through the hardship paperwork that you've already received. I wanted to be able to visually show you some stuff to support our application.
Okay. You do know anything you provide to us will have to remain with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, just wanted to give you a very brief introduction. You know, I'm originally from New Zealand. I came to the US in 1997 via an H-1B visa with an Australian franchise company. My wife, Annie, she is from the Ivory Coast. She moved to the US in 1999 to complete her master's degree. We have 2 daughters, 27, 21, and a 5-year-old granddaughter. We proudly became US citizens on March 13, 2009. We purchased our home let me just get that. So they were kind enough to give us the opportunity to do a presentation. Wanted to show you that first image just so you can get an idea of what we're talking about. The boat that's on the right-hand side there is the one that's ours. Both our neighbours are here today. I'm sure they're going to explain that both of those additional docks have gone in recently. But we purchased our home in Snug Harbour on Jan 31, 2002. We were excited to be able to raise our children in this wonderful neighbourhood. Finding a home with waterfront access was a dream come true, as we were already avid boaters. Our house has been a 20-plus year labour of love, and we finally completed our last major project in 2023. One of our first projects was our boat lift, which was installed in January of 2004. And that meant that we no longer had to trailer our boat to a public ramp. When the kids were young, hardly a weekend would go by that we were not out on our boat. The inability to be able to use our boat, especially now that we have grandchildren, is devastating to us. We hope today that the Board of Adjustment will understand our situation and grant us the variance so that we can once again enjoy our boat and restore our ability to navigate safely on and off a newly constructed boat lift. So just that image shows you when we bought our house. What I wanted to highlight is that the original seawall, I know it's a rough-looking deck, but the original seawall is the seawall that's still there today. We've never made any change to the seawall. So, just really quickly, the hardships are technically really a direct result of the BOA-approved variance of 23V0010, along with additional lower deck that was added to the construction project after the variance was approved, and I'll speak a little more to that. Our hardships are basically inability to safely navigate our boat without hitting our neighbours' structures or their boat. Currently, we're unable and haven't been able to launch for probably 6 or 8 months because of dredging that occurred on both sides by both neighbours as part of their dock construction. We have an extreme pie-shaped nature of our lot, which means we have the least amount of space to work with in the canal compared to our neighbours on either side. We are faced with a significant financial cost to reconfigure our boat dock so that we may once again be able to use our boat and restore our property's ability to have a functional boat dock lift. And of course, it has a negative impact on the resale value if we were to not be approved. So we're hoping that we'll be able to get this variance. This next photo just shows you the dredging that occurred. So, that's the dredging that occurred on the west side. That's the dredging that occurred on the east side at the completion of their projects. When that sand all moved, because we're at the end, and particularly when the wind blew, it all ended up under our boat dock. And I've always had trouble getting my bunks down deep enough to be able to launch. It's currently impossible. I also wanted to show you, because it was brought up in my neighbour's variance application, so there was questions about the validity of our boat dock, and so I wanted to show you, if you go online and look at permit number M01565574, our boat dock was permitted, and I've got the original marine construction proposal, and it says on there that he would build to City and Country Code and that all permitting was included. And then you've got a picture of it's an old survey, but it shows what we were doing in terms of putting in a double piling lift. And then in the last image you can see that it was finalled on 2/11/04. So it's been in there for nearly 20 years. Something else that came up in that meeting was that our previous boat was much smaller. Fortunately, I still have a picture of our old boat. It was a 1996 Glastron that we purchased in 1998. It was 22 feet long overall. Our current boat is a 2006 Nordic Star that we purchased in 2008. It's 24 feet long. So we're talking, 2 foot longer, but the lift was designed for a 6,000-pound boat. When it comes to how I launch, I think it's important for me to explain how I launch, because it is challenging. My neighbours now with their docks, their lifts, they're able to hop in their boats, lower it down, and away they go. Launching from an elevator-style lift is far more difficult. we cannot board, we cannot lower the lift, we cannot motor away. You'll see in one of those pictures, there's little steps that are actually 20 inches wide. That's how I get on the back of the boat. I take the covers off the boat, I lift up the engine, I then get I tie on 2 ropes to the front of the boat, I exit the boat, I hang on to those 2 ropes, I lower the lift. Sometimes I have to hop on the bunks to get them into the sludge so that I can, get it to float. I've never, ever been able to push it directly off. I've always had to push it to my neighbour's property to the west. I drag it off the lift, I start pushing it out, I swing it around, and then I bring it up to the dock, our dock like you see. I tie those 2 ropes on to the dock there. We load, you can see our Doberman hopping on there. We untie and then we reverse back to the ground canal. And that's how I've launched it for 20 years. Anybody that has a boat knows that once you figure out how to launch your boat, you launch it the same way every single time. With the construction of the Delilah's boat dock, along with the additional lower deck that was added afterwards, it's made it impossible for us to be able to safely launch. I mean, I can't actually get it off the lift anyway, but it's impossible. Knowing how I would swing it around, especially if the wind's blowing, I'm going to be hitting part of his structures. Furthermore, navigating from this position is extremely challenging because I've got to avoid what is now built to my west, as well as make sure I avoid my submerged bunks and arms that are from my elevator lift. So it's going to be extremely challenging. And it's just basically not safe. What I'm concerned about is as I'm pulling it off with the ropes, if I hit anything, am I going to get sued? Am I going to get, by hitting anything, is somebody going to fall off? It's just particularly dangerous. So I actually, I have signs out. We have cameras, ring cameras. We've had them out there for a long time, sort of watching over our boat. I managed to capture this video, which shows a small 12-foot skiff coming into that little area. And I just want to show it to you because it really highlights, if this 12-foot skiff is having trouble, it really highlights the difficulty I'm going to have in trying to navigate a 24-foot boat into that same area. So what you're going to see here is he, obviously not really a capable boater, but he's going to pull up to our property, hang on to our dock, manhandle the boat around, pull up to my neighbour's dock. But if you can envisage a 24-foot boat going into that area, you can get an idea of why I'm looking at struggling. So I'll cut that there. But they then manhandle it and pull up to my neighbours. Okay. So what we did, we got our survey done. So we've got a full survey here showing we went to great lengths to try to figure out how to make this work, given that we've got that tiny little triangle to work with. And we actually used AA Land Surveying, who both our neighbours used. And I'm actually using the same land construction, Carter Hayes, who built my neighbour's dock to the west. I just felt like if we use them and if I use that same, Carter understands what we're dealing with. He was going to be here today. He actually signed one of those forms. He got a phone call just before his father got taken to the hospital in an ambulance, so he's not here. But he was going to come and explain, as the contractor who built my neighbour's dock, how it was impacting us. One of the things that AA did provide us is a survey that actually shows both neighbouring structures. And so that was extremely helpful in us being able to then produce some slides to clearly show you to scale using those surveys, because I was able to overlap the survey that we had and then overlap their survey. I added in the boats to give you a visual effect, but basically that drawing shows the current situation with all three boats, neighbours' boats docked. Both our neighbours can now, both neighbours' seawalls are new, both lifts are new, so they're able to hop in their boats, navigate away. I'm currently not able to launch. And for 20 plus years, as I've said, I've manhandled the boat off. There's no way I can swing the boat around without hitting some part of that structure, potentially damaging their property, their boat, my boat, or causing injury. It's just simply not safe. This drone photo shows you the current situation. And I took it just to try to give you a visual of what we're proposing, because it matches pretty closely in terms of the drawings, what it's really going to look like. So if you look to our neighbour to the east, she's still going to be able to back off and away she goes. And there's probably, I think I measured about a good 10 feet between her outer piling and our pilings that would be on the slip there. And then, of course, if you look at my neighbour to the west, he's going to be able to exit and then start backing out and make his way out into the canal. So this shows it very accurately represented, replacing our current elevator lift with a 4-piling lift akin to those utilised by my neighbours. It's important to note that the boat dock was approved, my neighbour's boat dock was approved by the variance, but then there was an additional lower deck. I'm not sure if any of you were there. Maybe Mr. McCann will recall that there was talk about that area there being left open for us. That didn't happen. After the variance was approved, they got the permission to move the dock over. That then gave them more permittable area, and so they added another lower deck to be able to launch kayaks from. And this actually is from my neighbour's presentation from 23V10, where he actually, because one of the suggestions in that meeting was that we do exactly what we're proposing to do here today. Now, we respectfully went to that variance meeting and we objected because we knew that we would end up here, and we knew it was going to end up costing us $30,000. But I put this in here because this was Tony's drawing. Tony's an avid drone pilot, and so he took these images, he used them in his presentation, but I think you can see it very accurately depicts exactly what we're proposing to do, and this was something he thought was, made sense at his variance meeting. So I also wanted to just sort of highlight, I did, in preparation, I can tell you I've done an exhaustive amount of preparation to be in front of you today. I've watched some of the meetings, and it just happened that there was a meeting a couple of months ago that was a very similar situation, a house in 305 Ursa Ave that they described as a big baseball lot, and they had a tiny little triangle, and they did get approved for, I think it ended up being a 97% variance. Theirs was, they were basically filling in the entire triangle. I appreciate the circumstances are not the same, but I just wanted to sort of highlight that it's, hopefully it's not without, not an impossibility to be able to get a 100% variance, which is what we're asking for, and I appreciate that's a lot. One of the things I heard today that there's a couple of opposition letters. I haven't seen them. I don't know what's in them. They've not been shared with us. I will tell you, we went to great lengths to try to talk with our neighbour Melissa. My wife has been reaching out for the last 10 days. We really wanted to speak with them.
Well, we can save that.
7 days?
We're not going to have a conversation now with the neighbors.
Well, I was just going to say we've tried very hard to try to communicate, so that, and when the sign went out on the lawn, any of our neighbours that asked us about it, we showed them all of the stuff that we've just shown you here today. And 11 neighbours wrote letters in support. There's some neighbours here today in support. So we're really hoping if we can get this, as I said at the bottom, that we can restore harmony within the neighbourhood, because it's been extremely challenging. That's all I have. Thank you.
Ma'am, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you did a good job.
I have some questions. Actually, I'm probably gonna have a lot of questions. First question I have is you said you had a survey done that contains your proposed dock and the existing docks for your two next door neighbors.
Well, no, they actually, so this, and I'm happy to give you this one.
If you do, we're gonna have to keep it.
Yeah, you can keep it because I have more.
Okay.
In fact, I can give you both, because that survey, in fact, it was Carter Hayes, it was actually Carter Hayes, our contractor who worked with AAL and requested the survey. And quite frankly, I was actually surprised when this one showed up on the doorstep. I wasn't actually expecting to get a survey that had their structures on it. So then I contacted them and said, no, hang on a minute, I need actually a blank survey, because that was at the time when we were looking to draw in what we were looking to do. So we then got a second survey that had just our property, but then we had a third survey which was our property with our proposed dock, and then I was able to superimpose, literally put them on top of each other, and to be able to show what it all looks like combined. So that's how that all came about.
All right, so the survey you presented shows the neighbors' dock structures, but not yours.
Well, and the other one shows ours.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But the one you just presented.
Right, so it shows our property
Okay.
with their structures, and then the other one shows our property with our structure.
But the other one is for your boat structure, but doesn't include the neighbors.
Correct.
Okay. So you don't have one from the actual surveyor with your boat structure and the two neighbors' boat structure.
Correct, I do not.
On the same survey. But you superimpose them.
I laid them on top of each other and created that drawing, yes.
In the last couple pages of your presentation, you have an attachment C that appears to be a survey with some added.
Yes, so that's the one where I overlaid the first variance with the second variance.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, the first survey with the second survey.
And when you say overlay, can you describe a little bit more specifically what you mean by that?
I used software to cut and paste the first survey, and then cut and paste the second one to scale, and then overlay the two together.
So when you did your overlay, you're not a licensed surveyor.
No. This is my drawing.
This
Yes.
is your drawing.
Yes.
Based on your belief of how it would all fit.
Correct.
In the overlay. Okay. And you did show you showed a slide with an overhead, maybe a Google Earth overhead or an overhead of the actual property, and there looked like the property lines were drawn in, and perhaps there was another overlay done with that.
This one, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was my attempt to try and show. I wanted to really try to show how the surveys with the overlaid drawings, and then try to make it look real for people to be able to see. So, we would try to meet with Melissa. We wanted to be able to show her that we were leaving plenty of room between our structure and her structure, and also, very clearly show that, Tony with his new structure, he's still going to be able to exit this, and start to turn out into the canal, really just to try to visually show what it's going to really look like.
When you did the overlay on the depiction on the right.
Yes.
That's the one you created.
Yeah, and that was a little bit of cut and paste of cutting out that picture of the boat and trying to. I mean, if you look at I know it's crude, but I tried to look. If you look at it, those are 3 foot wide
finger piers.
Finger piers on my neighbours. I mean, I've probably drawn them a little thicker than 3 foot, but again, just trying to visually show. And I even, in order to accommodate that, we've cut the corner off that particular finger pier, and so it should match the survey that we had done, the drawing.
The depiction on the left, that's an actual photograph?
Correct.
And who took that photograph?
Carter Hayes, contractor.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, yes, that's exactly where it came from.
And again, this is your creation.
Yes.
But I will comment and say, just by the naked eye, looking at the two different depictions, the size of the boat looks the same. And the finger piers on both sides of the boat also look as wide, if not wider, than the neighbor's finger piers.
My wife actually made the comment, you need to thin those down. And I'm like, it took me a while to do that, so I'm not doing it again. It was not easy.
My wife tells me I have to thin down other things.
Yeah, well, yeah, she tells me that too.
So you're asking for 100% variance of the 7.5 foot side setback, but that's as it extends out into the water and not at your dock line.
Correct.
All right. So your seawall. We'll talk about your seawall. The structure you're proposing at the seawall, is that setback 7.5 or greater on either side?
Significant, well, greater, because we're talking about I think the overall is going to be 10 feet plus 3, so 16 feet. And I think our total seawall's 40-something. I should know that, but I don't. Maybe it's 38, so
Okay.
So whatever the difference is, I'm not that good at math.
Do you know how far out your proposed dock structure is going to be when you start encroaching into that 7.5 foot setback?
It'll be at 23 feet.
That's the end of your structure?
Correct.
I'm not talking about when it hits the actual 7.5 feet where you're asking for 100%
Well, it's both.
variance.
That's the end of the structure,
Right.
and that's where it hits the point.
But at some point before that, you're starting to encroach. So where would 7.5 feet be between your structure and the actual property line extending out into the water?
That math I'm not capable of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I can figure that out.
You showed a video of a skiff navigating into that area between your house and your next door neighbor's house. That area currently is what you have for your swing, or to back your boat up. Off your elevator,
So
currently.
Yeah, I swing out and then I do the opposite when I come back in.
Okay. And should that kayak platform not be there, would that give you more swing?
No, it wouldn't. So I brought this up in the previous variance that the reason I objected to the original structure is I'm more concerned about hitting what was approved in the variance than what I even am in terms of, because I can't back up. The reason I tried to explain that in Tony's variance is I have to immediately start to swing the engine around. I've got to get the engine into the deep part of the water. It does not serve me to head towards that lower deck that was added. But it was more the point that it was supposedly left open for us, but it wasn't. The variance gave them the ability to add more.
So the kayak platform that you stated was added afterwards has no impact on you?
I haven't been able to launch, so I mean, if the wind is blowing, the day you came, the wind was, to look at the property, the wind was actually blowing down towards us, and that's, because I'm handling it with ropes, at that point the boat can end up anywhere, so I'm likely to hit some part of it, whether it's that part or the finger pier or the pontoon itself. I mean, what worries me is when I launch, I have to put my engine up, and then I have a spear, my skeg, that I'm manhandling and pushing into that area, and I could pierce one of his pontoons, or, I mean, it's just an ugly situation for me to try to avoid any of it.
Your next door neighbor did install a kayak platform that we were talking about. With your proposed dock that you want to install, would that give enough space between your dock and his dock to get at least a kayak through there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I'm expected to get a 24-foot boat through there, I think a kayak can for sure.
What about that skiff that we saw in the video? Would there be enough room for that skiff to get through there?
Well, there'll be more room.
There'll be more room.
Because part of the thing, because of the shape of that triangle, that pier that's on the west side, everything actually has to move over towards the east side in order for me to fit it inside that triangle. So it will actually create even more space. Like if you look at maybe on that particular drawing, there's one plant at the end of that finger pier that's sort of yellow. I mean, when you compare it so my boat and engine is further to the west in the current position than any of the structure would be when we build the new structure. Mm-hmm. So it actually opens up more for my neighbor to the west.
You said that with the dredging from both your neighbors, that some of that fill ended up under your elevator lift and under your boat. Are you able to actually get the boat down far enough to float?
No, I have not launched it since that dredging was done, because I was like, okay, I can go and get a sump pump and I can start dredging and I can push it all straight back to them, but then we're going to end up in who knows what kind of mess. So, so I just left it. I've done nothing with it.
Currently, the depth is very shallow. We're in dry season. When did the dredging occur?
Well, these structures were built second quarter or third quarter of last year, I think. I mean, the neighbours are here; they'll be able to, tell you. I'm not sure.
Mr. Chair, can I just jump in for a second?
Sure.
I just want to, I hear people saying that there was some dredging that was going on. Zoning does not regulate dredging, so if there's any dredging that's going on, I would highly suggest that you get with Natural Resources Management. Sometimes it's allowed, but most times it's not. So I just want to make sure that if there is any dredging going on, that you're contacting the correct county department to see if it's allowed.
I mean, we objected to their variance, but we accepted that you granted it, and I appreciate that dredging is probably going to be part of that construction project. So I didn't want to make an issue of it. I just figured I'm going to end up here in front of you guys. Hopefully we can resolve this. So I didn't want to call
the reason I asked isn't necessarily about whether the dredging is valid or not. It was, I want to see what hardships you're facing right now.
Well,
and one of those hardships is you can't even get your boat to float.
Yeah, even before these projects, my wife will tell you, because she does. I've got a process, and part of that when I put those bunks down, sometimes I'm standing on those elevator arms to get it down. It's very sludgy back there. It seems like it's not solid. It gets very sludgy. So sometimes I'm pushing those arms just to be, even before these projects. But since these projects, there's just no getting it down.
Your proposed dock would result in a 24-foot projection out into the waterway?
Including the engine.
Including the engine? So the structure itself won't protrude 24 feet? The
structure will be 23 feet, which is the length of the boat, and then we've allowed another foot for the outboard, which half of the outboard hangs over the back of the boat and the other half is the extra foot.
You said you have the original seawall?
Yes.
You haven't constructed a secondary seawall behind it?
No, in fact, when I had Carter come over, one of the questions was, because we don't know how old it is. It was there 20 plus years ago. But I actually had him look at it and he said, no, it looks good. He said, don't touch it, just leave it. So that's what we're doing.
Okay. Mr. Newman?
I think you exhausted any questions that I would have had.
Dr. Bass?
I agree. I think you've asked all the appropriate questions that I was thinking of at the time. So yes, I'm fine at this moment.
Ms. Mallard?
Well informed.
All right. Would you step aside? Maybe have a seat?
Yes.
Mr. Bodie, I understand there were additional letters of opposition and in favor that maybe were not provided in the package?
Kristen, is there?
So we can give you, there's 11 letters of support.
I think they're on the printer, so we're going.
All right. These are the letters you included plus additional ones?
Yeah, I think we had 6 that were in the package.
Okay.
Or 5, and then we got an additional 6. So
Okay.
we have a total of 11.
And do you have all the letters in opposition, sir?
Seen them.
What I want to do is I want to invite audience members to come speak in favor or in opposition, but I also want to give you the opportunity to review the other letters while we're doing that, so that you can, when you come back for rebuttal, you have a chance to address them. What I'll do is I'll start with any members of the audience who wants to speak in favor of this variance request. Good afternoon. Do you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Lilo Rowan, and I live at 1800 Bayshore Drive in Cocoa Beach.
And will you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give to this Board of Adjustment is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Yes, hi there. I've lived at this address, 1800, for about 11 years, and I've gotten to know all of my neighbors, and I understand what happened with the variance for the Delilas, which unfortunately prevents the O'Kanes from properly, safely launching their boat. I used to be able to go out with them, and ever since this, the new structure was built, he's been unable to go out, and I have also not been able to enjoy going out on the canals and into the river with these lovely people. I think it would be a grave injustice if they were to not get approved for this variance, so that it would reduce, which would reduce the value of their home, the value of the enjoyment of the canals that we've been able to do for several years now. And in fact, the O'Kanes practically have been taken away a right that they've had for over 20 years. So I feel very, very strongly that this should be approved so that they too can enjoy the waterways the way their neighbors are able to do at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have the 2 letters in opposition. I'd like you guys to have a copy of them and to review them while we're going through this process. Is there any other audience members that want to speak in favor of this variance request? Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Marie Zambuto, and I am the trustee for the Marie E. Zambuto Trust at 34 West Point Drive, Cocoa Beach, where I currently live. I've been in front of you.
Would you raise your right hand?
I'll gladly say anything that's absolutely the
caught you.
truth. That's all I ever do. I'm quite vocal. Had to become that way as a widow.
Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give to this Board of Adjustment is the truth?
Absolutely.
Thank you. You may proceed.
I've been in front of this board once before as a hardship variance, so I'm quite familiar with the process, as were several other of my neighbors who were all complained about by somebody that had moved into the area for having a shed from the 60s, I think. Anyway, that was approved and I was grateful. I think it would, as Lilo stated, would be a grave injustice for the O'Kanes who have been in this property longer than I think anybody in the room, in the whole neighborhood, and to not be able to enjoy what they have enjoyed since 2002. I mean, that's a long time. I've only been there since 2010 in the neighborhood, and the neighborhood's, culture seems to have shifted fairly recently. It's always been a fairly chill neighborhood where everybody pretty much got along and supported one another. You know, my situation where I was complained about for having this ancient shed that I knew nothing about other than I bought the place that way. It's a similar situation to theirs. I mean, they bought it with a dock. They bought it with, you know, a seawall. They've used the boat. They've used the, you know, put the lift in the way it was recommended that they put it in, and all approved. I guess I'm having difficulty myself personally with why is one new thing approved that then affects somebody else that's been there for a long time? That's not okay. And I'm, you know, think that the board needs to really examine those type of practices that, you know, are in favor of one that inhibit somebody else. And the O'Kanes have been very helpful to many of the widows in the area. They're just kind people. You know, they may not have been born here in the United States, but they sure as heck are great American citizens and great neighbors. And I personally want to make sure that you understand that I believe it is a hardship case, having gone through one myself. And I think it's to no fault of their own, and that they should, you know, that they're having to come in here. It's a big deal. It's a financial deal. It was kind enough of the board at the time for me to waive my fees, you know, and I know for a fact that it is a huge financial hardship. Anything beyond what he's requesting to do would be an even greater hardship. So I'm hoping that everybody will come to the realization that this is, what he's proposing looks legitimate. It's not affecting anybody. I've looked at all the plans. And, you know, having been an avid boater in Newport, Rhode Island with some of the big boys and the big boats, okay, against America's Cup people, you know, moving a boat and manipulating a boat is no small task, especially in heavy wind. And Snug Harbor is known for its heavy, heavy wind. You know, I live on the west side. I take the waves. I take all the wind. And I can honestly say that what he's stating, having lifted a boat in and out, a 30 feet, 6-inch boat, Etchel's class, for many years in Newport, I can assure you that you do it the same way each time, and you do it for safety reasons. You don't want to hit anybody, break anything, you know, et cetera. We used to joke my husband's first name was Kirk. You know, no, he was Captain Kirk, but he was also Captain Crunch. And, you know, he occasionally would, you know, hit things just because the rules were the rules in racing. That isn't what Mr. O'Kane wants to do. He just wants to enjoy his boat again and enjoy his home that he's purchased years and years ago. And I think the board, you know, based on the fact that they granted another variance that has inhibited this problem or created this problem, needs to fix it and right it. And I want to propose that they even waive his fees. You know, it's not fair. Money's money. And being a widow and I pinch pennies every single day, putting 2 kids through college and grad school, I'm telling you, it's not an easy process. And I believe it is a hardship. And I just want the board to hear that from a neighbor who's appreciated their help over the years. And I'm here to help them. Okay, that's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other audience members that would like to speak in favor of this variance request? Good afternoon. Would you state your name and
Good
address for the
afternoon.
record?
My name is Beth Skedsvold. I live at 24 West Point Drive. I'm in the same Snug Harbor area. And I reviewed all the materials.
Would you raise your right hand?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give to this Board of Adjustment is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I went through all the materials, the hardship worksheet, and it appears to me that that the variance should be granted. I was laughing when I saw the video of the little boat coming in there, because we have a little boat, and I was thinking, oh no, I hope that wasn't us, because we take our boat out and check out the neighborhood, and that cul-de-sac or that little bay there is very difficult. And we've got a boat lift, and we can just pull right in and pull right out. And trying to be able to back out and turn around would be so difficult. And the neighbors is perfect. You just pull right in, you pull right out. This third one, you'd pull right in and pull right out. Right now, that's not the way it is. So again, after I reviewed everything, it looks to me like, yeah, this makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other audience members who'd like to speak in favor of this variance request? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you state your name and address for the record?
My name is Judith Green, and I live at 8 West Point Drive in Cocoa Beach.
Ms. Green, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you are about to give to this Board of Adjustment is the truth?
Absolutely the truth.
Thank you.
I have a partial view of the 3 neighbors, them and the 2 neighbors on the side. My neighbor has a full-on view. I'm over there in his backyard a lot because I watch his cats off and on. It looks really nice, what's been done. The neighbors are able to get their boats out, come and go, and he can't. Because I wouldn't even attempt to get that boat off that lift. He's going to need a crew to help him. For that reason, he needs to have this variance approved. They've got theirs approved, they can come and go, they should be happy. And he needs to be happy. I've been here since '04, living in this house at 8 West Point. I've known them since '04. They're wonderful people, and they deserve to have the variance. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak in favor of this variance request? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in opposition to this variance request? Please approach. Would you state your name and address for the record?
Melissa Byron, 1722 Bayshore Drive, Cocoa Beach.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give to the Board of Adjustment is the truth?
Yes. I'm going to start. I wrote something, but I want to respond to other things later. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Byron, and I'm the trustee of the Melissa Byron Trust. The trust owns the property located at 1722 Bayshore Drive in Cocoa Beach. I live next door to the applicants who reside at 1732 Bayshore. I understand that the board has already decided to go forward with today's hearings. However, I respectfully wish to include this statement in the record. The website states that you must get a 10-day mail notice. It doesn't say courtesy. It's in conflict with 62-252. And I think that the information on the website should be accurate, considering this is a quasi-judicial meeting. Also, when you search, just go online to search Brevard County Zone variances. The first thing that pops up is you get a 10-day notice by mail. And so none of the people around them got notices. Now, and their home is really to the north of me. And if I live in a cul-de-sac, so when I go out, I turn right. I never turn left because it's dead end. There's no reason for me to go there. So I don't see any notices. And I don't know how many people still subscribe to Florida Today. I'm sorry, I don't. So I just want it to be known that I'm participating in the meeting, but I don't waive my right to receive notice in accordance with the zoning variance process set forth in the Brevard County's website. Now, you have in front of you my objection and request for a postponement have been noted. I'd like to approach with photographs. They are marked Byron 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If you...
Is that what was already handed to us?
Yes. If you look in the very back. Okay. Which way? This way? Yeah. Go ahead and turn. Thank you.
I'm Melissa's sister.
As been previously testified, the applicant, Mr. O'Kane, of 1732 Bayshore Drive. Mr. Lynn abuts one side of the applicant's property at 1742, and I reside at 1722, which abuts the other side. As a preliminary matter, the county ordinance I will reference during my presentation is section 62-2118, residential boat docks, piers, and specifically subsection. I'm opposed to the variance 24V0005 O'Kane property for the following reasons. The building of our dock and lift at 1722 Bayshore Drive maintained the current distances between the O'Keefe's lift and mine. We did not alter the space between the O'Keefe's that they were using to navigate their boat in the canal. We did not change that. I'll show you this. This is, here's what you need to see. Put that one up. We didn't change it. See how close he is to me? That's the same. He's been that close from day one. And it's okay. I'm fine with it. We didn't alter the space. In fact, by eliminating a right angle on the side of our dock closest to the O'Kanes, we created more room for the O'Kanes to maneuver as they pull away from their current parallel docking position. So you see that, and see Byron 1 and 2. I attended the variance hearing for the Delaney's request when they constructed their dock at 1742 Bayshore Drive. And the O'Kanes never stated that the granting of said variance would impair the O'Kanes' ability to use their boat. I went back and listened. They never said they couldn't use their boat if we both, if we did what we were doing. The proposed changes to extend the O'Kane's lift and piers past the end of my current boat. I don't have as good a drawing as he does. I can only use what, I have. This is what it looks like. That's what it will look like. See how far past my boat it is? That's the end of my boat. So I won't be able to get out because as he's saying I can come straight in, I can't because it's really shallow there. It's really shallow. I can stand there. And I go in, but coming out into the navigable water, and I have to turn in to get into my lift. And I agree with Gwyn. It's really shallow there. When it's low water, I can walk out there and there's rocks. So mine's very tight. There's no doubt. So I can't pull it straight out and then go out. I have to come out at an angle into the water. Maneuvers pull away from their current parallel. The proposed changes extend the O'Keefe's lift and piers past the end of my current boat. As you can see by our crude drawings, I didn't have time to get an engineer. Zero side setbacks are an unreasonable request for the Canes because it means I will not be able to get my own boat out of my dock nor access the port side of my boat. I am allowed by ordinance to come out 16 feet. I came out 13 and a half feet. I wanted to put a finger pier so I could get to the other side of my boat on the port. You know how I get to the other side of my boat? See that kayak sitting on the side right here? I have to get in the kayak, go around the side, put the cover on, and then strap it under. That's how I can get the cover of my boat. So if I were to put a finger pier out, which I still have 2.5 feet, and he puts his finger piers out, I can't get. If he puts his piers there, I can't get my kayak even in there to put the cover on my boat. Our neighbors are asking for 150% increase over the present ordinance requirement. This is entirely too much encroachment on their adjacent neighbors' properties. The O'Keefes have the smallest, this is important, the O'Keefes have the smallest piece of waterfront with the largest boat. Their boat is 24 feet, 22.11 for the boat and 1 foot for the motor in length. The length of their boat, together with the code requirement of adding 7.5 feet on each side for setbacks, demonstrates that presently the Canes are already using 39 feet of their 34-foot waterfront. 38 foot. Measuring from the seawall, because the seawall is not, I'll show you, we did an overlay too. Only ours isn't as pretty as his, but here's the overlay. You can see where their seawall, if you see the green line is where, that is your high mean water line. That's where your seawall should start, at your green line, okay? As you can see, mine starts there, because I'm there with the Byron, and Delano's starts on theirs too, their seawall. Gwyn's and Annie's don't start on the high mean winter. They start 10 feet in. So they're already 10 feet further out with their seawall than any of us. So 10 feet plus the 24 foot is 34 feet out into the canal, because that's, those are the different measurements. So measuring from the seawall, the O'Kane's beach is 108 inches wide on top of it. So projecting another 9 feet from their seawall, their waterfront reduces from 38 feet to 28 feet side to side, which means they're both exceeds the setbacks on the starboard side by 11 feet. I mean, his boat's almost in my backyard now, but that's okay. I know that, because he needs to be able to use his, and he's been able to use it forever. And that's fine. He bought his house 3 years before I did mine, and he put his dock in before I did. I didn't put mine in until I was going to live there full time. By contrast, I have 53 foot of waterfront and an 18-foot boat, which complies with the county ordinance. If the county ordinance would have allowed me to have bigger, I probably would have put in a bigger one. But no, I have to abide by the setbacks and how far out I can go. The O'Kanes created their own hardship by purchasing a boat in 2008 that is too large for their current land. County pictures from 2007, when their dock and lift were completed, shows a smaller boat that most likely complied with the ordinances at the time. There it is. County records show that the current boat was manufactured in 2006 and transferred to their ownership in 8/15/08. Please return the photos. Okay. Granting the variance is not in harmony in general intent and purpose of the county ordinance intended to preserve navigable inland waters, and such variance will be injurious to me. May not be to Tony, but I think he's going to be injured too, because we need that basin to bring our boats out and turn around. And I've only got an 18-foot, I know. But we will not be able to get our boats out. I definitely won't. I will be so trapped that I've got nothing, because I've got both corners cut. Contrary to Gwyn's statement on the variance worksheet, number 1, the special condition, we did not dredge. I have 2 inches of water. Do you know where your bunks, if you're familiar with the boats and the lifts, you know how the bunks come down and then you have the flanges underneath them? I had to cut off 6 inches of flanges underneath my bunks to bring my boat in, okay? So we torched those so we could get, because otherwise it sits on the bottom and I can't even get my boat in. He's right, it's shallow. I mean, it'd be nice if we all 3 could work as neighbors to go to the environmental and say, can we dredge the muck out of here? That would be a great thing for all of us, is to make that request. You can see in the overhead shots how low the water is, and it is, and especially now when it's low. A close inspection, you can see the sandy bottom. Atkins' response on our hardship on number 1 states that we enter in perpendicular to the seawall. That's what it says. As shown in picture 2, as shown in picture 2, I don't enter perpendicular. I don't come straight into my dock. I come at an angle. I am parallel as most everybody is. I mean, so I'm not getting to come straight in. It takes me a couple shots to get straight in. So I'm not. I don't think that shows that we come in perpendicular. The canal we're talking about is shared by 3 of us, not 15 people who can come and tell you how much they're great people, and we all may be great people, and we like each other, and we are neighbors. But it's our small piece of paradise, us 3. No one else comes down there. They're just. You may have a letter of support from the neighborhood, but the majority of vehicle traffic just is 3 of us. In fact, I had a neighbor come by with a letter written by the O'Kanes asking them to sign it. They told me it didn't affect them, but wanted to be good neighbors. I showed them the backyard, and they exclaimed, no way should they be allowed to go 24 feet out or be closer than they already are. The O'Kanes have purchased the house across the street which offers plenty of waterfront for their boat. Their plans are to move there. Why grant such a variance that will disrupt the only 2 neighbors of the East Creek Canal? I wish to be transparent and tell this board that when my contractor put in our lift, they measured from the fence line, not the property line, and we are not 7.5 feet on the north side. Our contractor is working to fix this mistake since he readily admits he missed the measurement. Due to lack of notice, we were unable to research the applicant's 2003 permit for the construction of the existing dock in order to fully understand their response to question 2 on the hardship. They state that in 2003, they applied for an elevator-style boat lift due to permitting limitations. What were the permitting limitations that caused them to do that? Accordingly, I do have that question for staff or the board. What were the permitting limitations? It appears from Brevard County Appraiser's website, the O'Kanes had a smaller boat in 2007. Were they required to have an elevator lift because of the size of the boat, waterfront property size, or the required side setbacks? Thank you for your consideration. Sorry it wasn't as complete as could be, but honestly, Annie did come over. She wanted to talk to me. I had my arm in a sling. I just had 4 weeks out of rotator cuff surgery. I'm still 7 weeks, so it goes this far. So, and my grandson was coming in town, and I had family that was not ill, so I couldn't sit down with her, but ask her to send me the stuff, and she did. And that's what allowed me to prepare my...
When did you find out about this hearing for today?
Annie came over and talked to me last Thursday.
Do you know? 7 days ago.
The 14th? Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's either the 7th or the 14th. That's what I'm just, okay.
Yeah.
You need to go up to the mic so that we can have it recorded.
We're trying to explore something as a board.
Okay.
Is that
The 14th, the 14th would be...
minimal 7 days ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to
Got a lot
address.
done in 7 days.
I want to address your concerns about the procedure and moving forward today with what you're claiming is inadequate notice. Like staff had mentioned, that is a courtesy notice. That I know the website may not say it.
doesn't say that.
Maybe it needs to be adjusted for clarification, but it is a courtesy notice. It's not a mandatory notice. The sign for the variance was posted in the yard properly, and
But I don't go that way. How can I see a
I
sign that I
understand.
never go?
Ma'am, let me please speak. I'm addressing your concern because there's more than one point of view on it. We're moving forward today with a decision made by the board to move forward based on believing that there is adequate notice. The required notice is certainly adequate. The courtesy notice may not have went out, but the 2 neighbors most affected, you and the other next door neighbor, the Delias, are the ones most affected. They had noticed. They're here today. They have an opportunity to oppose. And in Mr. DeLella's letter that he sent on Monday to staff, he said that he spoke to other neighbors that day who weren't notified. So as of Monday, the neighbors were notified. We could have postponed this meeting, but I think it would have just been a waste of everybody's time. You're not the only one who rearranged their schedules to be here. A lot of people rearranged their schedules to be here. And I think everyone who's here is prepared to move forward. I think postponing it to the next meeting would just, it doesn't even make sense. It's inefficient. So moving forward, I think was the proper decision. But I wanted to just make that clear and put that on the record since what you brought up and put on the record. There are some other questions I do have. My first question is, have you seen the applicants use their boat and operate their boat after the construction of your dock and the Delella's dock?
I don't know. If you see, I don't know if they have or haven't.
No, I'm not saying, do you know if they have you seen?
But I don't know if they have or they haven't. They could have, but I can't answer that.
If you would agree, though, since the Delellas installed their dock, the configuration of that cove has changed.
Yes.
Do you have a suggestion for us about how the applicants can maneuver their boat and get their boat out of there safely with the configuration that it is now?
I've seen him do it before, because my piling on my deck, wood dock, it's a picture.
When you say you've seen them before,
I've seen him before I put mine in.
Yeah, before. I'm saying after you, the way that it's configured right now, with your dock and the Delela's dock currently in place now, you said you have not seen them maneuver their boat to get out.
No, but prior to that, where my dock was.
I'm talking about.
I'm concerned that they're going to hit me. They're not going to hit Tony. They're going to hit me.
We could talk about that in a minute. I want to explore this train of thought. The configuration of the cove has changed with the addition of your dock and the Delela's dock. You have not seen them maneuver their boat since that change occurred. My question to you is, do you have a suggestion on how they can maneuver their boat and safely exit and de-launch their boat from their, or launch their boat from their property to use it?
Yes.
Okay.
This is prior to Tony putting in his stuff and me putting in my stuff, okay? Right there, right there is the end of my dock. That's the end of my dock. Before I did anything, I had that, it was in place. And every time that I saw Gwyn go out with his family, he would back, he would back right near that tree over here. He'd right back up there, then swing it around. That's how he did it. And then there were some other times that he would swing it over there and his family would get in, but there's a lot of foliage, so I don't know exactly how he got into his boat, but he would turn it and head straight out. And then there are times that I've seen him back it out. But see, he could swing back over there.
Okay. You're showing me pictures and you're talking about what the cove used to look like before the construction of your dock and Mr. Delela's dock. Now there is a dock behind him and a boat lift and a kayak dock. And the way you're suggesting he back out, he doesn't have that space anymore. So is there another option other than what he used to do before the construction of the docks that you suggest he could use to get his boat out of his dock?
But there is more space. But see, you say there's not more space. There is more space. Tony moved his seawall back to his ark, back to it. So there is room for him to back it off and then make the swing around my boat dock and my boat lift. It is possible to do. It hasn't been shrunk down so much that he can't make the turn. Or, as he told me, and he also told you at the variance hearing, how he gets out is he backs out. If he backs out, he's got to swing his back end out to back in. He doesn't need any of Tony's to do that.
So you're speculating how he can.
Now, I've seen him do that. I've seen him,
You've seen him do it. Okay.
Two ways.
Bear with me. You've seen him do it prior to the construction of your dock and the Delela's dock.
Yes, but
Have you seen him do it since the construction of your dock and the Delela's dock?
No.
So you're speculating that he has the space to do it.
I'm looking at an overhead picture that shows that he has the space from the picture, as compared to the last time where he has, he can pull forward to mine and then back.
Did you, you mentioned something about 150% increase. I just want to set the record straight. There's no 150% increase. They're asking for 100% deviation for the side setbacks and a 50% deviation for the extension out into the water.
He doesn't have a 7.5-foot setback from me right now. He didn't before I put in mine. If you look at I would have liked to have an engineer draw with my plans, his plans, and the Delela's plans together. But I went to AAL surveying and said, hey, can I have that? And they said, no, you cannot have any drawings of other people's property. So we had to do it by just taking the scale from our own surveys that we had, and then scaling it out to show. This is the scale to show where his boat is going to head out. That's where it's going to be. It is past the end of my boat. How am I going to get out? And how am I going to get around my boat with this kind? You know, maybe he could move it. I think it's big enough.
You said he's currently encroaching into the 7.5-foot setback?
Yeah.
So you're saying he's currently out of code?
Yes. And I think he's currently out of code with the seawall being 10 feet in front of the high water line.
Can you please put that document back up?
Which one?
That one. The one you just had up, the one you just took off. The one you just took off. So I asked the applicant the same question. You're not a surveyor, are you? And you created that document.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your estimations of where the finger piers would be and where the structure would be, but you're not taking that off of a survey.
No, because I didn't have time to get an engineer to do that.
And the boat, we heard testimony that boat's 24 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And they're requesting to go out, project out into the waterway 24 feet.
Plus the 10 for the seawalls in front of.
Currently.
Currently in front of the water.
24 feet from the current seawall is what they're
Correct.
asking for. So
But he's already
I'm not
10
going to ask the question. I'm just going to make an observation that your finger piers appear to be significantly longer than 24 feet based on the size of the boat.
My finger piers
The finger piers that you put on that document. And I'm not trying to argue with you. I understand your situation. I'm not taking one side over the other. I just want to put everything on the record because there's obviously a contentious disagreement about this entire cove from the time the DeLellas installed their dock until you installed yours until now.
But I installed mine with no variance. I followed the ordinances that the county told me I had to. They said 16 feet out and 7.5 feet setbacks. I did that. My plans were that way. I even went 13.5, which gives him even more room on my side. If he wants to swing the nose of his boat up as is, swing it up, he could swing it out. And I agree with him. The canal is very, very shallow.
Did you add a seawall to your property?
Pardon?
Did you add a seawall to your property?
Yes.
So when did you add that seawall?
When I added this.
So you projected further out into the water with the addition of your seawall.
No, sir. I have done exactly what they told me to do. The green, that is the arch of that cove. That is the arc of how it goes. Okay? That green is where your seawalls should be. See, my seawall is there. Tony's, can't go through Tony's because I'm sorry, Tony, it didn't show up. I'm right on where I'm supposed to be my seawall, 10 feet in.
I'm not saying it's out of code. I'm just saying when you constructed it, you constructed it a little bit further out than your property was before you constructed it.
No, I didn't. I had coquina rock there. We removed the coquina rock and we put the seawall in exactly to code of what I was supposed to do.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
I did
that. Makes sense. And that's what I'm trying to explore, all the facts.
Okay.
I don't have any more questions, but I do appreciate you coming in. I know it's not easy to oppose your next door neighbor.
Disney World today from my grandson.
But I do want to see if any other board members have any questions.
No.
But mine is to code. Go ahead.
And I appreciate you, by the way. He asked and got a lot of the questions that I had answered on that. Just one big thing, just to finish up that postponement question, because I know that we may have, you're probably not going to be the last person to talk to us about that. If this were postponed, would that have made your testimony any different? The only thing that I have right now is that you are unable to find out about whether something was allowed or permitted properly in 2003. Was there anything else that you would have been bringing or been better prepared for or anything like that if you had gotten the extra 3 or so, whatever that was, days from that person?
If I would have gotten a full 14 days, I could have gone to an engineer and said, can you draw this up for me? So I wouldn't have had to overlay and say, this is what, you know, it's this,
So it would've been-
Gwyn's and my overlays are the same, they're handmade. And
Right.
it would have been nice to have a surveyor, an engineer to do that for me, so
Okay,
I could see what it
the
is.
drawings would have been more, okay. No,
More
that's- and
realistic.
That's right, and that's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of, is on that, because I know that you make it very clear here, you know, I believe you said at the beginning, something to the effect of, you don't waive your right to it, but you do want to make sure that you are present for this. So, perfect. That's the major thing that I had that wasn't answered at that time, so thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Mather?
So after listening to you and listening to everything that you stated today, my question would be this. He asked you, what do you suggest they do? Now, they haven't used their boat for a very long time, and I know you're not looking out the window, you don't know the last time they went sailing, I understand that. But the point is, what do you suggest they do? If it's just 3 of y'all neighbors in that situation right there, nobody else, what do you suggest they do?
I would suggest that all 3 of us get together and go and see if we can get a dredging permit. Because he's saying his bunks can't fit. See if we can get a dredging permit through the environmental, and to get the muck out, so we have the ability to, all of us, to be able to bring our boats down, because right now they sit on the bottom with the bunks. That, I think, would be beneficial for all of us, because it would dig out his area, so he wouldn't have to stand on his bunks like I do sometimes, not his, mine. And then we all could have equal access. He'd have enough room to turn, because he wouldn't be sitting, because he didn't have enough water. He would have enough water to be able to float the boat and rotate it.
Right, so that's one suggestion that they possibly could do, correct, Mr. Brody?
Yes, and it's Bodie. They could go to environmental health, not environmental, natural resources, and see if they could get a dredging permit. But that would be done through a different department, not ours.
Okay.
Right.
And so that's one suggestion that you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The other is, see, we don't, and I know Gwyn is a good boatsman, we don't know if he can't get out because he doesn't have enough water, or if he can't get out because he can't swing because the boat won't fit to swing. Because he can swing it. I mean, if he's using 2 ropes, you take one on the bow and one on the stern, and you swing it around, which I do on my boat too when I come to the mouth of my lift. Because it's at this angle it's coming in, and it needs to be at this angle parallel to my property. So I would think, I just think that if he would explore another way of let's talk about trying to make more room, more space in the water for him, and then we'd be more, because already he's overusing his waterfront. His waterfront is 38 feet, and he's using 39 feet. So let's work together and see if we can dredge and make the waterway better for all of us, so we all can have our boats come in without being on dry land.
So it's really not a problem that he has a larger boat or anything. That's not the issue. It's just that you want to be able to just come and not have his boat hit your boat, correct?
I want to be able to get around the port side of my boat and put my cover on. I would like to, you know, because in reality, if he gets this, then I could come back to a building and say, I want to put in a 3-foot finger pier on my side so I can get around, not the kayak. But we'll always be touching each other.
Right.
It's not, that's not conducive to the whole neighborhood. So I think that, you know, we should try when it's high water to see if he can rotate. I mean, I had my marine guy who was just bringing my boat come in, and he goes, I'll teach you how to get out of there. I said, he can't get out. He goes, yeah, he can. I'll teach him. I think that would be a better solution at this point.
Okay, no other questions?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other audience members who would like to speak in opposition? Please approach the podium. I apologize if I butchered your last name. DeLello?
You actually did pretty good.
Okay. Would you state your name and address for the record?
My name's Tony DeLella, Anthony DeLella, and I live at 1742 Bay Shore Drive, Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you are about to give to the Board of Adjustment is the truth?
Yes.
Do you plan on speaking as well?
No, I'm passing.
Okay. How can we help you?
So, I thought we said our goodbyes last year, but here we are. I think 3 of you were here for my hearings, plural, and saw what I went through too, and the agonization that I went through. So I have something, again, so you asked the last question, when did you find out? I called Mr. Bodie a few weeks ago when I saw the little green sign because I went through 2 of these. I also went through Ed Jones, who is on the other side of Melissa, who is not here today, that I reached out to on Monday night, who I don't even know if he is one of the letters of opposition, but there's really, like we say, there's only 3 of us that matter right here, and to a lesser degree, the other 2, because they use their watercraft and could come into that, the one pontoon will come in and back into the canal and then turn out to the exit our canal. So when we did that, we could have put in a lift and a dock without coming for our variance, if you remember, that was facing the O'Kanes, stayed within 16 feet, that would fit in. That would never allow them to come out, nor do this, right? And through that process, as the O'Kane stated, we brought this exact scenario up and even asked, and you could hear it, if we could come in together for a variance. We used to be great friends, and this has soured it. And through that process, there's all the drama that goes on with it that I'm definitely not proud of my side of it, and they're probably not either. But neither here nor there, we're not on speaking terms, and that's a shame. This board did, though, approve where I was going for all those reasons, because I didn't have any other options, and allow them to use their current setup. When I do that, and we'll get to some of it, when I do that, we swing around the cul-de-sac. So when I first came to the county to get my permit, it was the beginning of 2022. I spent a full year before coming to the variance, and even tried to get a variance, and then spend another 4 months through that process. Through that year, we brought Leanne out from Environmental Resources. Can we put a slip in? Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this? All to accommodate their current setup. And by doing so, we ended up where we are. Our first one was way over towards them because I thought there was something that we could do. Actually, Land and Sea, that company, when they came out and designed, their first design was just put it smack in the middle and go out. First day I moved in, I talked to Gwyn. It was that day he told me that he didn't push off. Now, I've never owned an elevator lift. I didn't know you could or could not push off. I assumed he did. So I also assumed that I had 7.5 feet that I had to work with on my side and his side, right? So I just wanted to give a little context. I prepared something, but I didn't find out until Monday. I called Mr. Bodie a few weeks ago when I saw the sign. Monday I woke up and thought, I haven't seen my letter. The reason that's important to us, or to the situation, is that we've been through 3 of these. Letters went out for all 3. On the county website, it says the situations above must be. Now, we're not lawyers. We don't go into the code then if I see on your main page that it's not. So Ed Jones is not here today to give his comments. That, I think, is a miss. So regardless, we're moving on with this, and I, to some degree, I don't want to postpone it to postpone it. As Mr. McCann said, if nothing's going to change, nothing's going to change. But I would like the board to consider going back to the precedent that's been set for years of mailing out letters. And I've gotten them when I lived on Bahama Boulevard as well from the city. It's just the idea that we would look at that little green sign. Now, we live on that side. We drive by it. The other half does not, of the people that would abut this property. So I'll go on. I was going to hand out a letter or a picture, but I don't think it matters. I think that you understand that the properties that matter are all within our cove in the letter. No reason. I was pointing out where the letters had come from because I don't believe that it's germane to our situation. But I also don't want to diminish anybody's ability or desire to come out and speak here. So I'm going to, there's one for each, one for me. So there's also one from Mr. Bodie's crowd. And I'm going to try to skip some of these and just speak to you. You know, it's hard because I put all my thoughts into it, and then, you know, usually I would, last time I came up here, I thought about it, put some bullet points down and came up and talked to you. But the pictures that I have, I'll refer to as I go through this. Look at that, we just skipped a page. Okay, so we're going to skip a little bit more. I talked about how I went through this variance process. Our entire seawall and dock, they're all designed. The seawall itself is designed around the O'Kane's current structure. We had the option of taking that string and working it around the circle, and as long as we had three legs of the circle to keep a circle-like structure. Melissa had to do the same thing. So she has 3 legs that create somewhat of a circle, and if the O'Kanes did it well, we'd have 9 legs, or then the last one, we'd complete the circle with 12 legs. But the O'Kanes is straight, and so, as Melissa said, it's actually 13 feet from the original line to the O'Kane seawall, right? And now they're asking for the 24 feet. That puts them out 37 feet into the cove, which is almost half of the 80-foot cove. My only issue here is I will not be able to get my boat out safely. More importantly, in. And so when you look at pictures B and C, which are on page 2 of that packet, you'll see the current setbacks. I think you were asking about how the boat fits in currently. And then I highlighted that as well, both on their survey as well as something I submitted at mine that has the shaded out areas. So you ask what boat would fit in there when they purchased their place, and it would be about 13 or 14 feet. So when you go out to the 8-foot level, most boats are 8 foot wide, you're down to about 28 feet. Take away the 15 feet for setbacks on each side, and you're at 13 feet. Now, we have never complained about or had a desire for them to remove their boat or anything, but as the O'Kane stated, they haven't been able to. Right now, I can't get my boat out. The water is 2 feet down. No one can get their boat out. The O'Kanes, as I saw over the first 3 years of living here, were not using their boat very often anyway. In fact, I made comment to my wife that I'm surprised they're pushing back so hard. They rarely use the thing. So watching them, working with Mr. O'Kane specifically, before we even started our process, I watched how he used it to get off and put the boat back on. The wind, when that comes down, and I didn't have time to get video and things, I really would like to have just put a drone up there and watch me pull in, because as I come down that canal, if you look at the next page, I'm sorry, if you look at picture F, okay, you see that I'm pretty much parallel to the O'Kane's boat, almost, right? So if they go perpendicular to where they are now, the idea that their boat would be right up against the seawall when they come up, they'll be a little bit off of that. I don't see, and I took a picture, I just flipped it, of their boat that is a little bit smaller than their actual boat, because I didn't want you to tell me it looks a little bigger. So that boat is a little bit smaller. You could see by the time I clear my pilings and I'm off of my lift, I'm almost into their boat. Now, the way I have to do it, I go right to the back of Melissa's boat, because when I try to come the other way, it gets very shallow on that side, and I've almost hit when I try to back out of the canal. By the time I clear it and then try to turn, I'm almost into Melissa's all the way over there. Either way I try to get out in this scenario, I don't see how I have any, but if there's 2 feet, that's a lot of wiggle room. Everybody has gotten up here and talked about the wind and how hard it is, and I'm coming down there, and then I have to take the left to get into my, I've never been able to do it by myself. I have to text my wife. In fact, I can't go boating if my wife's not home, because I can't get the boat back on the lift without doing all that. And I don't have the luxury of being on my seawall, right? I'm off of my seawall. We also, if you remember, we reduced my my piers down to 12 feet, which I accepted. That was one of your restrictions. And which also meant by the time I would have a step down, I was not able, and I'll address why we added that little pier, which we were well within our rights to, right? We can go out 16 feet almost with that same thing. I would never do that. Our intent is never to come in here or try to stop them from using their boat at all. So we put that in there because I wasn't able then to safely have a step down and have to launch our kayak and stand up from there. So we put a little 4-foot by 15, I think it is. When we put our seawall in, we were forced to get back to that line of that circle. So we are back 13 feet from the O'Kanes, this little 4-foot pier, and they say that that's not the problem. I have a Ring camera, right? We all do these days. The O'Kanes have not tried. They have not tried to get their boat that we've seen to come off there. There's 35 feet in between the back of their boat and the corner of my pier, and where the pier and the step down meet, that's 35 feet. We gave up 2/3 of our property. If you remember, when we came in here and asked you to be able to give them as much room as possible. We came in, the first one was tabled so that we can go another 3 feet to the right and then limit our piers from 4 feet to 3. We started with 24 by 4 and ended up with 12 by 3. I'm not complaining about all that. I felt like we did it the right way, and we worked with this through everyone. But as Melissa said, and you asked the pertinent question, what else can you do? There's only 2 other options, I think, that don't make this as unsafe as what they're proposing. One is the dredging. And I know Melissa and I have talked about it, like, we would love that, right? Because today I can't use my boat. So what would I pay to have my part done, right? I think that's something that is really a great option for everyone that leaves the boat tucked away when it's not in use, but allows them full use of their boat, right? The other is they now make tilting elevators that would allow him to drop and tilt and push off to clear those bunks, right? So there are other options, even the orientation, but when we talk about the six points of the hardship. What's that?
I wasn't going to say anything. Can I just
I'll
provide
just
clarity?
have to swear
Yes,
you
swear
in.
me in. I'm Kathleen.
What's your name?
Kathleen
Right here.
Delela. Oh, sorry, Kathleen Delela, 1742 Bay Shore.
And do you
Yes.
swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth?
Yes, I just wanted to provide clarity on the dredging. I think we've used terms before, and we've been corrected in our other ones about using the correct terminology, and dredging didn't occur. I think what he's referencing in the pictures is when you put in those pilings, they have to blow out the sand to put the pilings in. And we use Carter, who he's using Land and Sea, and we're like, don't blow it towards him because blowout does create, I said, blow it down the canal. And so I think Melissa did the same thing. It's the normal blowout that happens when they put the pilings in. And I think that's what is perceived as dredging, but we didn't. We would love to have dredged, but we did not. So I just wanted to provide that because I know that came up, and I just wanted to clarify. So that was all my point.
So the special conditions and the I'll talk about, the O'Kanes mentioned that January variance. I watched that and thought, okay, this ought to be interesting because this is a lot like what we're talking about, but it really wasn't at all. There was no safety issues in that. That was really regarding views and desires to put an old boat, or a 50-year-old boat, 57-year-old boat on a structure that would not affect any other boater. There was no way that would. This is significantly different where both of us on each side, I think you're creating another situation where I'm going to come in. I don't know that I could ask for another variance without tearing my brand new dock and lift down and then moving it over. And I hope that's not the spirit of this. The other part is when we go through the special conditions and we look at, I don't want to bore you with some of these, so I'm going to skip through them, and I know you will appreciate that. The property lines have always been the same. They bought their house with that extended already. which, while they didn't, that's not something they did, it is existing, and it is there. And to now extend it another 24 feet, we're codifying something that is really 100%. And while I know we're using today the 16 feet from the current, if you add that, that's 230%, right? That's not a little extension, and that's what's really causing it. I'm not saying, I think them purchasing a larger boat or a boat too large for the structure without anybody living next to them, they did assume that no one would ever need that property, that they would never have neighbors that would want to do what they had. And it's an old neighborhood, but in the last 3 years, all 4 houses, or maybe 4 years, 3.5 years, all 4 houses around them have changed hands. And that's where, when that happens, we all know we all want to create our paradise. When you buy a piece of, like you said, when you buy a piece of water on the property, piece of property on the water, you expect that there's going to be boating. And I can appreciate that they want to boat as well. I still think they can, and I think there's other options that don't create an unsafe environment for a legitimized boat and structure that this board put into place. Granting the variance will not confer any special privilege. I think I just described those 2 privileges with being able to go halfway into a cove that's just very tiny. The literal enforcement, again, they purchased the property with the same lot lines. That hasn't changed. The variance request is a minimum. I'm having a hard time with that one, really, because I think they already need a variance request for what they have today, right? They would have, they should. That's not my business, and that's not, Melissa and I have always told them, we have no desire to go and complain about your boat and get this boat removed. We appreciate that it's been here, and we want you to be able to use it. So that's between the county and the O'Kanes, not between us. We would let them leave it like that forever on end. The current size of that boat was their choice. So if they had Melissa's boat, we would not have this issue. We would not be having this issue because the boat would still be non-compliant, meaning it would sit within the setbacks. It wouldn't be an issue. They'd still be able to use it. So the variance being the minimum, that large of a boat, having 2 finger piers on each side of that, I'm having a real struggle. I almost didn't want to say it because that's not my biggest issue. My biggest issue is how far that thing is going to have to stick out. The other side of that is, do they need to face this exact direction? Can they angle it instead of this? I don't know. I don't know that that's any better for them, but allowing them not 24 feet, I don't think I'd be able to safely go if they were out, I think 18 feet, which is still well past their ability to go if you look at the triangle that they have. They have 267 square feet to work with. I have 1,100, and Melissa has about 1,000. They're asking to be treated equal within that ownership, but we paid more for our property because we have a 60-foot seawall, right? Those are things we pay more in taxes because we have a larger piece of water. Those are things that are facts that I think that granting this does create an undue harm. The granting this variance will be harmonious. I think I beat that one to death. That it does, the rendering shows how difficult it would be for me if there's no wind. Any amount of wind would make it nearly impossible. So, granting the, I'll summarize it real quick. Granting the 3 variances, I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm sorry, Mr. McCann. Granting the 3 variances would create an unsafe navigation for us to launch. The pie-shaped applicant's property is very small, as they admit, and is currently an oversized boat for that property that sits within the setbacks. The applicant's property was extended approximately 13 feet, causing a lot of this, along with the size of the boat that they purchased. Although their boat does not fit, I already said that, they're not asking for the minimum if they're asking for 100%. The need for piers on the side, they don't have piers now, nor have ever used anything like that. He described the way he pulls it off, which is perpendicular, and then they load from the front. And you could see the little bumper that they have in front of theirs. And I said, I'll leave it with this. We did not need a variance. We do not need to come and spend the amount of time. I don't think anybody has spent 2 years from first permit submission to being able to have a boat and seawall behind their house. We labored over the ability to have everybody use it, and this board agreed. And I think this is going back on with that and causes the financial distress that I would then have to come back in here, hope you give me another variance, spend however much to pull up all that and move it over to be able to safely use my dock. And I don't see how that's possibly fair with a legitimized boat and structure. Melissa just said something that, and I'll have to talk to this because it is something that's important, because I don't think this is about the O'Kanes using their boat. If you look at, hold on. Kathleen. Yeah. So this is about property values, being able to get more for the house when they sell it. The O'Kanes purchased this house on October 5th of last year. And as you could see, last week, knocked it down, hired Tom Dutton to build them a new home. And this is about capturing as much possible for the resale of their home, leaving us with a mess in the back for a new homeowner that may or may not need that. So while I totally agree that it's the safety and everything else, if you disagree with me, is there provisions that would allow you to say if you do move, if you do sell, you remove the structure and bring it back into code? Is that something that could do? Because I don't see how this is about using this boat, and we've offered other suggestions. I would really appreciate, stipulations being put on that, should you not agree with me. I still fight that it's way too unsafe for that area to go out 24 feet with that size boat. And I think that's it. I'll take questions.
You will? Okay, I do have a few. Would you agree that you worked hard and diligently to get the current dock you have now?
Yes.
Wasn't even your first choice.
No.
But you worked hard. The board worked hard with you.
Yes.
How many times do you think I went to your house?
I know 2, but I think 3, because Kathleen said you went once when I wasn't home.
Okay.
I was traveling that day.
The reason I'm asking is I want you to understand that we try our best to make the right decision.
Yes.
We work hard to make the right decision. We worked hard in your case to make the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to work hard in the O'Kane's case to make the right decision. We don't owe any more loyalty to you than we do the O'Kanes. You guys are our constituents. We work at the pleasure of the commissioners on your behalf for you. With that, whatever decision this board makes, I need you to understand that we're making the decision what we think is best overall for the community, but also giving them consideration so that they can have on their property a dock that they could use, which everyone wanted. And you mentioned that you could have put a dock in that would have been in code, you wouldn't have needed a variance, and it would have obstructed their property, which I appreciate, and I'm sure they appreciate. But let me ask you, was that your preferential dock? Was that really what you wanted?
No. My first one would have had my boat closer to them and go straight out, right? Because I knew 7.5 feet. I saw all this stuff. I didn't realize that we were going to be restricted to 16 because of the way we looked down the canal. Neither did Land and Sea because they took a deposit for 24 feet down the canal. So my first one was not that. I would have definitely chosen to save considerable money, 6 surveys in front of this board twice, $1,000 for the survey. I didn't want any of that. That was only done to be a good neighbor and allow them to use their boat. And I feel like this is negating all that, and you're just swapping his harder way of launching, for my harder way of launching, and putting me into the same fears that he has today, except his boat has never been able to fit within that property. And mine always has. And I bought a smaller boat than I wanted. Remember, I wouldn't buy the boat until I came to this committee. It really seems hard that I would go backwards like that. And we're just flopping his hardship for my hardship and Melissa's.
You do understand, though, the way you originally presented your variance request likely would have been denied by the board.
I don't know.
There was a reason that you went back to the drawing
you're correct,
board.
Because we didn't understand, through all the workings with the department, I didn't understand that the structure. So in Cocoa Beach, where I've always had a boat and a structure, the structure is what you permit, not the boat. While we were going on, Mr. Bodie said, I've heard you mention 18 feet structure, and you're going to get a boat that's a little, that'll hang up over that, but you need a minimum of 18 feet. You need to have your boat within the structure. So at that point, I looked at it on video, my face went white, because I'm thinking, holy cow, if I come in here and and you all were nice enough to say, let's table this. No one had spoke. We hadn't gotten to public comments, and we tabled it before. But I do think that I did not consider moving further over right, because I didn't think this board would want to have me come in with 2 variances. So I was trying to get away with just 1 variance, not thinking you would want to hear 2. During that first hearing, that was discovered, and I immediately, and the neighbor over there would not care, because they have a 175-foot wraparound with their dock on the Grand Canal, right? So moving over, Mike wouldn't care, and I talk to him all the time. That's not a problem for him. We don't encroach on their use of their land at all.
Mm-hmm. And the point I'm making, and I recall all that, you did move the proposed dock closer to,
And
more
make
in
the
the
pier
setback,
smaller.
more in the setback
Right.
on the
So
other side.
If you remember, our pier on that side, away from the O'Kanes, is over land. It's not even over.
I do, I recall.
Right, so we moved it over, and again, took another 2 feet to make the pier smaller. We made them a foot smaller each, and then instead of making 11 foot wide, right, which is kind of standard, 10 and a half is what I had on my other, I had 11, I thought we were going to go and keep that, and we went down to 10 in the center, which I don't love, because, as I said, my wife has to help me navigate into the poles, in between the poles.
Mm-hmm. So we all worked hard to find you a solution.
Yes.
All right, and we found you a solution.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned that you had 3 weeks' notice. You contacted Mr. Bodie.
Yes.
3 weeks ago when you saw the variance sign.
We didn't talk about the date or when it would be. He just suggested, come to the hearing. I said, okay. I was working that day. I remember I was in my car driving when I talked to him. We didn't talk about much. I asked a couple of questions about the county made note that when he applied for his original permit before the variance, that the county said, yeah, the line starts back where the dotted lines are. So your 16-foot projection starts there. That's what got my attention with it. Then I saw the green sign. I thought, okay, how does this work? I called Mr. Bodie. He told me, nope, we're using the survey. The new line starts at the survey. So he gets 16 feet from the survey until his property lines and setbacks cross.
So you saw the notice that was posted?
No, that was a notice for his permit, not the notice for this. What I saw was his green sign, and I called Mr. Bodie. We didn't talk about the date. You suggested that I go to it, but the date I didn't even know was set. It's not exactly easy.
What I'm getting at is you saw the green sign.
Yes.
And the green sign has the date written on it.
You could ask the O'Kanes. They have a ring. I have never. So I saw there was a green sign. Did I see the green sign and go read it? No.
Well, that's the purpose of the green sign, to notify the next door neighbors.
Totally agree with you, except the precedent over the last 20 years has been set to send out letters, and you did for my 2, which caused plenty of people to come in here. Well, no, plenty of people to come in and support me, and allowed the O'Kanes plenty of notice to write their letters and come in and oppose it. right? And I just don't feel that the rest of our neighbors have been given that chance unless you understand this process. And I still woke up Monday, thought, when is that? That's got to be coming up. And if I didn't, I don't know that I'd be here. If Melissa, right, wouldn't have said, hey, where are you? Like I had to do with Ed or any of our other neighbors. So I'm saying that
And
I think
the reason I'm asking is because if you did and read the sign that was posted, you would know when the date was.
Sure.
Further. So the sign did its job. It notified you that there was a variance hearing, and you just didn't go read the date.
Correct.
And with the amount of notice, you came in here with a pretty extensive presentation,
I worked my
which
butt
I
off over
appreciate.
the last 2 days.
Which I appreciate. And the other neighbor in opposition came in with a great presentation as well. I'm concerned about the allegations that you didn't have enough notice when clearly you guys had enough notice. So
Okay.
I want to move on from that.
I definitely agree to move on from the beginning because the decision was made. And I just suggested to this board and to the department that there's been a lot of precedents set about letters. And when you go through it and you get the letters and now you come to expect them, and it says on the, when I went to look for where this meeting is and when, it says right there that we would get a letter. So I guess I'm taken back by you accusing me of knowing when it is and using this or something. That's not at all what's happening.
No, what I'm saying is I'm not making any accusations. What I'm saying is the county made proper notice.
Oh.
And
to the rule.
You're making an allegation that they didn't make proper notice. So I'm trying to set the record straight that proper notice was made and you had 3 weeks to prepare.
Okay.
Should you have read the sign that you saw? That's right next to your property.
It's my only comment is that it's
Okay,
in
well, I'm
direct
going to move on. I'm
conflict.
not going to argue about
Okay,
this
no,
anymore.
It's a direct conflict with the rule on the website.
It's not a conflict with the rule. There's a courtesy and there's a mandatory. So the notice is a courtesy. It's not mandatory. It doesn't happen in every case.
Did you read what the website says on the bottom?
Sir.
I
Sir.
submitted it. I
I'm
don't
not-
want to argue with you either.
You are arguing with me,
I'm
and it
sorry.
needs to stop. Okay? I want to draw your attention to photograph G that you presented.
Yes, sir.
Just like the other two, just like the applicant and the other lady in opposition, this is a rendering that you took a actual photograph of, and then you created the rendering of what the boat and the dock would appear to look like.
Yes.
You're not a surveyor.
No.
Okay. When you come in to your dock, right? Are you crossing paths with their dock? I'm just trying to get an understanding of what the navigation would be like for all three of the neighbors in that cove.
So, to be fair, I do it this way because there's not a 24-foot boat there now. So I come on the opposite side of my house. So I come down where that seawall is that you see, that's straight. That's the end of the canal, and then it starts the cove. So I try to hug it maybe, I don't know, 5-6 feet, because you can see it gets shallow there. So you don't want to, but I want enough room to be able to, right, again, there's no boat there, so I'm not trying to navigate and thread the needle. So I come and swing out and get it in there. The pontoon and the wind don't play nice together, right? When you're trying to do it, there's not a lot of power sitting in the water like that. It's not an inboard or anything like that. So I do swing it out pretty far, but I've never tried to come down because it doesn't feel right that you would come straight down and try to then turn, right? Because if you're boating, there's no brakes or anything. That's just the way I've been doing it. So I've tried to come out and both back down the canal when I launch, as well as back towards Melissa and spin it. And that seems by far more controllable. And that's just the way I've been doing it. Like you say, when you find a way to do it, you do it.
Okay. And even in your depiction, again, don't read too much into what I'm saying, but that projected dock and boat that you superimpose onto this picture is not blocking your dock.
Meaning that my boat wouldn't, when I launch it, that structure wouldn't interfere with mine? With my boat, I mean?
I'm not saying would it interfere. I'm asking, is it blocking your dock?
My dock?
The picture you made.
Yes, the picture I made, I'm unsure of the question. So is it blocking my dock? No. But my boat doesn't come out of the dock on any angle. So it sort of does, because if I superimpose the boat behind it, I would have to be within a foot or two of his boat. And then when I go to turn, either way I would turn at that point, the front end would swing, and I'd be all into his boat and structure. I don't see a way to come out of here and then turn without the front of my boat. And then, so the way I do it now, I don't think that would be possible, because I get close to their boat today. Right now, the way their boats sit, in fact, I panicked about 2 months ago because the way the forks sit and the water was low, that I was getting too close to him because it was a windy day. So that's 8 feet off the wall.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Newman?
I'm just making sure that if you covered all mine. Let's see. No, you covered everything I had.
Do you have any questions, Ms. Mallard?
No.
Do you have any questions, Dr. Bass?
No, everything I believe has been properly covered. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sorry.
Is there any other members in the audience who wish to speak in opposition or in favor of this? Seeing none, you may reapproach. Do you have any rebuttal or additional comments that you'd like to make?
I do have some comments and some rebuttal. First of all, I just wanted to bring up my previous presentation and show you both parties have denied dredging, and then the clarification was the dredging was to sink the piles. In those photographs, you can see the piles are in, the structure's built. The dredging is occurring after the structure was built. It wasn't to sink piles. So I just wanted to clarify that point. Secondly, I'm not quite sure what us purchasing a house across the street has to do with this, but in terms of our neighbours, but it is fair to say that we're concerned about selling our house, and that the new owners will be stuck with some situation. So there is part of this is us, we talked about the value of the home, but being able to sell our home without the new owners having some issue. And that's part of the reason we're in front of you today, to try to get that squared away. I'll start with a response to Melissa's. I've got to say that we're very disappointed that both neighbours are here and opposing, because we certainly tried very hard to communicate with Melissa, and I will tell you that unfortunately there is no communication with Tony. We respectfully opposed their variance because we knew it was going to create a problem, but after they got it, we accepted that, and I think Kevin, Mr. McCann, you even know that we even thought about filing a what do you call it, an appeal, and our attorney said to us, look, you're wasting your time, put the money into doing what we're doing here now. So that's the decision we made. So we did try very hard to meet with Melissa and Candy so that we could show them the drawings. We hoped that when they saw the drawings, or even today, when they saw the drawings, that they would appreciate that we've now spent, I mean, this is not a 2-year project, it's a 3-year project for us now, because we had to go through all those other variances. Now we're in front of the board doing it ourselves. And for us, it's probably a $30,000 commitment. You know, we're already $3,000 in. We're going to have to spend another $25,000. We're going to have to decommission an elevator that's already there. And when we went to Melissa, we were really hoping to try to work with them because we know she's got some issues with her current boat dock. And so she's got some, I think the permit's currently closed but anyway, I want to show you a video and then I want to speak to a few points. And I apologize that we're taking...
I don't mean to interrupt you. Is this video pertaining to your variance request or
Yes.
a neighbor's current situation?
It's pertaining to our current situation because it has
Yours or your neighbor's?
it's from our neighbours, but it impacts ours.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a very short clip.
I'm going to get what I have without a variance. I'm going to go 16 feet. I'm going to put in my lift. I'm coming in as an angle. I keep my 7.5 feet setbacks on the side, side setbacks. I'm good. Gwyn doesn't have it, so that's why he can't give it. He doesn't have the setbacks. If you shoot a line straight down my property line on my fence, which I will remind you is 7 inches inside my property line, so you come out and go with the 2 points, Gwen's boat's on my property line.
Okay, so I really want to clarify a few points because it has a direct impact on what's going on here. Tony gets what he wants. I'm going to get what I want without a variance. What we're asking for is not a want. It's a need required as a result of what our neighbours wanted. We're going to have to decommission, remove and make redundant an expensive elevator lift that was constructed and permitted to code at the time. We're now going to have to build a new dock system install a 4-pole lift system. None of this was expense that we wanted to incur. And having demonstrated our plans that they do not interfere with our neighbours, we feel like we should be granted not what we want, but what we need. She said here, I keep my 7.5 foot setbacks and I'm good. Melissa hasn't kept her 7.5 foot setbacks. Currently, if you look at the permit, her dock, it hasn't been finalled because one of those pilings is over the 7.5 foot setback. And so what we were hoping to do is go to her. So she has multiple deficiencies. One is she's over the setbacks.
Again, I'm not worried about your neighbor's deficiencies.
Okay. All right. Well, in as much that we wanted to try to work with them, we don't have it. She's right. We have that little tiny triangle. She also said my fence is 7 inches. It's not 7 inches. It's actually 0.7 of a foot, and it's on her property line, my property line. And I think her issue with her dock is actually because she thinks or has been thinking that the fence is where the property line is. But anyway, there's been a lot of conversations. I've looked at this stuff very, very in a lot of detail, and there's been a lot of things said that I just want to clarify. And so, there's the current situation, and if you look at where the fence is, this is where she's now got an issue. And so we went to her wanting to try it because I suspect she's going to end up in front of you. She's going to have to either rebuild this dock or come in front of you asking for forgiveness for a structure that's being built. And we'd be willing to support that. And that's what we were hoping to do. We are trying to work in harmony with them. So that's, I won't get into more detail there, but I do want to also show you one more thing. And this has been extremely painful for us, and I know my wife has trouble talking about it, but I just want to show you real quick. Again, in his video.
Everyone who comes up like that, and we're able to, one of the suggestions that the O'Kane put in their letter was to have them apply for a variance as well, so we could all pull in straight, which the neighbor who's about to apply for a permit is also going to pull in straight, and that, when you look at that, it just makes sense.
So what I'm highlighting is it made sense when he was applying for his, but it doesn't make sense now. And it's not quite what we said.
Everyone who comes up like...
Sorry, what I actually said was
everyone who
if the
comes
board
up
board grants this variance that they got, then yes, we're going to be in this situation. And this is a slide from his presentation where I think I showed it just to reiterate. He actually, this is exactly what we're asking for. And it was okay when he applied for his variance. He's objecting to it now. I hate to go there, but I want to show you what I've been dealing with. I have not been able to communicate with Tony.
Your relationship with the neighbor is not relevant.
Okay.
But I would like you to put that slide back up, the last slide you had. No,
Not
go
that
back
one?
one more. Just, if you would keep that up, I'd appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. O'Kane, before you leave today, we will need a copy of what you just presented to the board for the record.
So all of these, well, I guess the TV people have, well, it's all on here, but it's on this computer. But yes, I can give it to you in any other format.
So I'd like to open this up to discussion, so I'm looking for a motion to approve for discussion purposes.
Okay. I'll make, for the purposes of discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the variance as depicted on the survey.
We have a motion to approve the variance, all three variances as depicted on the survey. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a second. Mr. Newman made the motion. Dr. Bass seconded it. With that, we'll open up to the board for discussion. Again, it's sad that there's a breakdown in the relationship in the neighborhood. It's not relevant for our decision and for the variance request, but I hope at some point, when it's all said and done, you guys find a way to patch up, at least get along, and not have contention and issues with each other moving forward. You all seem like wonderful people. I got to know you, and I got to know you. I'm sorry I didn't get to know you, but I'll come over for coffee one day, and we'll make that happen. But thank you for everyone for coming in. It's important to each, every one of these parties. It's important to you. It's important to you. It's important to you. It's important to your neighbors. It's important to me. It is. That's why I spent so much time on this. I want you to know that. I truly believe that Mr. DeLello and Mrs. DeLello did everything in their power to get what they wanted, but also do it in the most minimal way to interfere with the neighbor. I lived it. I went through this with you, and you went back to the drawing board several times, and I appreciate that. And I supported it. We even cut your finger pier down. We did a lot to make that work. We found a solution. I want to find a solution for the O'Kanes as well, and I think they're entitled to it, and I think they deserve it. I think, whether their property is not as valuable as the next-door neighbors, whether they rebuilt their house, that's all insignificant to me. They bought a canal front house to be able to boat, and I want them to be able to use their property for what they bought it for, if it's feasible and doesn't negatively impact the neighbors, the community, the environment. So I would like to find a way and a solution so you can use your boat the way you want to use your boat. However, the way it's configured now, when we made a decision on Mr. DeLello's application, I didn't feel that you'd have an issue getting in and out of your elevator dock the way it was and the way you do it. Actually, I figured if you're a good enough captain, you'll figure it out. I went to your property the other day, and I actually saw the end result. And based on what I observed and what I saw in the presentation today, which includes depictions by all three neighbors, including the ones that they did by themselves, I truly believe that we created a hardship for you. You didn't create your own hardship by buying that house. I think this board created that hardship. And it wasn't our intention, but I think we also have responsibility to resolve it. And what you presented and what Mr. DeLello presented and Miss Melissa presented are photographs and depictions of what it will look like when it's done. I know you used a surveyor. I know you used probably the same surveyor and did your due diligence. And our decision is going to cause you to have to change the way you've been accustomed to doing your boating for the past 20 years. And it's also going to require you to have a financial burden based on our decision for the next door neighbors. That's not the reason I support your variance request. The reason I support your variance request is because we put you in a situation where I'm not convinced you can use your boat. I think between the dredging that's under your boat right now, I believe the swing is insufficient with the configuration right the way it is now. I'm convinced, based on the testimony from all the parties that came forward, that you don't have reasonable use of your property. And what you presented to us is exactly what Mr. DeLello presented and you played in that clip. And what he presented in his presentation for his variance request. I don't see that any different, what you're asking for now, than what was suggested you do, how many months ago that we had the last variance request. And looking at the pictures and being to the property and being an experienced boater myself, I know you can't get your boat out the way it is. And I also am very confident what you're presenting to us is a reasonable solution that will not interfere with the neighbor's use of their property. And I believe that all three of you will have reasonable use of your property, maybe not preferred, no one's getting preferred, but reasonable use of your property. And for that reason, I'm supportive of your variance request.
So first of all, just a few things for Mr. O'Kane here. So I'm going to start with actually this one because it's the easiest to get rid of. And I'm a little bit going to retread what you had talked about from my own perspective. So I have this thing, and just for the audience, it's because I don't think they could see it on TV. It's just a picture of a demolished house at 1711 Bayshore. And I don't, for the purposes of this whole discussion, for the purposes of everything, you guys are not, well, no, if you were to tell me that we're trying to sell our home and we would make more money off of it, I can't use that as testimony, vice versa. If somebody else tries to tell me, hey, this is going to, whatever this particular is for your personal sale, I can't take that into it. So for the purposes of our discussion, I can't use this, and I'm letting you know that I cannot use this for that discussion. Number two, which is more so in your wheelhouse that you could help me with, we are looking at, because I've decided to lay them out like the craziest little thing that I have on my desk here. I have everybody's artist's rendering of what this boat dock is going to look like. Sometimes it's a little bit further out. Sometimes it's, a little bit more to the right, to the left. Your guys's, though, I want to just make sure that I understand, Mr. O'Kane, how you came up with it, because yours, based on the other ones, seems to, it looks like you cut something out. Like, was this just how did you create that so I can understand if I can use this for my decision?
The one that looks like a picture, like a photograph, yeah, that one.
This is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I literally cut my little boat out
Yeah.
and turned it around and then tried to make a couple of pairs.
Okay.
The drawing that has the survey, I took the two surveys and pasted them on top of each other.
Got it. Okay. Because with that particular, view of things, that one looks like it will not harm your neighbors. Just so you're not, I see that. The other ones, I can see where they're coming in and trying to cause concern, because would they be able to come in one way or the other one? Ms. Byron is basically trapped in with her, everyone has their own viewpoint of it. Yours looks like it's actually cut out, or at least as best as you could get to model size. The only thing that I do wish that we had was a CAD drawing or whatever that would look like for it. But yours looks to be the most accurate based on the best that you could do. So that's what I'm using for my decision purposes today. Trying to make sure that I am not missing anything. Yeah, that is probably the main piece of evidence that I have on here, is that it looks like, based on what you're promoting, based on, I was at those meetings prior, I know what the proposed solutions were to this particular issue when it would come up. This looks like I'm generally in favor of what you're asking.
Ms. Mallard.
No discussion. I have all the information and I know my decision.
Dr. Bass.
Yes. I agree with the observations of the chairman. The water depth notwithstanding, undue hardship meets the legal definition in this context. Without the requested variance, the applicant has no reasonable access to the waterway, and use of the homeowner boat is restricted.
Y'all may sit down. With that, I'm going to read through the hardship definitions. In order to authorize any variance, the Board of Adjustment, through a majority vote, must find all of the following factors to exist: that special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification; that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant; that granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification; that literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant; that the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure; that the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and such use variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. With that, I'd like to take a vote on the motion. All in favor of approving the motion and the variance, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Your variance was approved unanimously. Thank you, everyone. This will adjourn the meeting of the Board of Adjustments.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.